We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. You got a couple of tired boy hosts this week. It's
yes,
yeah. I normally sleep quite well, but I had a terrible sleep last night. It was the fits and starts, half an hour, 25 minutes at a time, nonsense, and woke up early to finish off the topic list and all that. So we're both going to be a little discombobulated this week. Tom had all kinds of stressful things going on in the background. So.
I haven't even really I didn't get my coffee intake this morning before this thing started. Like, the whole thing has not been going well. My whole morning. I'm trying to work. Warning. I'm working on a review for like those exercise headphones. Those like over ear. I think they call them over ear headphones.
Huh?
Not open back or open ear.
Yeah.
Open ear.
Open ear. Yes, that makes
open ear. Yeah. So it sits on. I've got two pairs from the same company. It's like their regular and then their pro version of this of the thing. And I'm working on that review this morning, trying to get it done. I've just been it's been a long week.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. My son got accepted into FSU, which is Florida State University, which he's very excited about.
Congratulations. Very good.
And he wanted to go for a tour, so Friday morning he scheduled it last Friday morning. Remember, we're recording on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So the Friday morning he's had a tour scheduled for 8:30 a.m. And we were supposed to leave right midday. It's not like a 5-hour drive, 4.5 hour drive from here.
All right.
So we're supposed to leave midday on Thursday to go up there and whatever. But then he got a track meet at the last minute that they I don't know, qualify. I don't know how you have a last minute track meet, but you have a last minute track meet, and he's really wanted to go because he needed to he pole vaults. He needed to get it to a certain height in order to qualify for another track meet.
Okay.
Which was also going to be at FSU, ironically enough. Yeah. So he needed to hit like 12'6", whatever that is in centimeters. I don't know what that is. And he did that, but we didn't leave until like 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
And it's a 4.5 to 5 hour drive, and it was miserable. And then we did the tour in the morning and then came back, and then the weekend was full of car stuff. And it was just...
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yep.
And now it's spring break, and all my children are home, and that sucks.
Spring break in March? It's not even spring yet, officially.
It's spring here.
I mean, I can understand the weather in Florida, but it's officially speaking, the season has not changed.
It's spring break, Rob. I'm not.
Right.
Hey, I don't name the holidays.
Definitely
I don't pick the dates.
Yeah,
but they're all here. So, and the two that fight most often are currently cohabitating in this house with no buffer between them. And my door's cracked open to the home theater because I don't want it to get too warm.
Yes. Well, speaking of theater, such things, we're not going to talk about this in the news because neither of us are gigantic into the Academy Awards, the Oscars, or anything. But
I did watch a little bit of it.
Yeah, it seemed like a pretty decent show this year. Jimmy Kimmel kept things moving along as host. John Cena, yes.
I did see that. I was like, I think he might be really naked. That man looks like he might.
They had the behind the scenes. He had on the flesh-colored underwear behind that manila folder that he stepped out onto the stage with, side shuffling there. But had some good stuff. The I'm Just Ken live performance, which definitely that did not seem pre-recorded in terms of Ryan Gosling's voice. That he seemed like he was definitely singing live going there. That was a nice performance and everything like that. So the congratulations to Oppenheimer that swept most of the awards. Poor Things getting more Academy Awards than I had predicted it would win. Did not think Emma Stone was going to win Best Actress just because the actress from Killers of the Flower Moon everybody thought was a shoo-in to win that award, but Emma Stone ended up getting that. Instead, Cillian Murphy, well-deserved as Best Actor there for his portrayal of Oppenheimer. Robert Downey Jr., I don't know if I necessarily thought his supporting actor role in Oppenheimer is what I would have given him Academy Award for, but it's his first Academy Award for Best Actor.
Yeah, so, sometimes the Academy is like, he's deserved one for a while, and we have never given it to him, so here it is.
And Christopher Nolan, too, Best Director, well-deserved for that. So, all around. And then, of course...
I was actively rooting against anything Nolan related.
Oh, okay. Well,
not because I don't think the movie's good. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Not because I don't think the movie's good or that. I don't think he's a good director. I just think that some people are just so insufferable that they don't deserve things.
I mean, honestly,
I might be that person.
I liked his speech a lot. I thought
I did not hear it.
It was a nice. He was saying like, look, we've only been making movies for a little over 100 years now, and he's like, imagine if you go back to you're only 100 years into the invention of painting. Like, how much farther can we go? It's amazing to think about that. It's
was
really
he saying this while he was wearing an Apple Vision Pro?
Well, we're going to talk about some Apple Vision Pro in the news. He was not, but no, I liked that sentiment. I like the idea that we're perhaps just scratching the surface of what can be. And then the big one to me, the huge smile on my face from the Academy Awards was Godzilla -1 winning an Academy Award for Best VFX, a movie that cost just a little over $15 million. That no one could believe they had made that movie for that small amount. And so kind of nice there. And Barbie is an Academy Award winning movie, not for the gigantic categories, but for Best Original Song there. Billie Eilish is an Academy Award winner now there. So
she did a good job with her
song.
I did see her sing. I saw as you can tell, I saw the first 30 minutes of it.
The
or
beginning
something.
of it.
Yeah, and that was it. I was at a friend's house having dinner, and they had it on in the background, and we watched a little bit of it before we left.
But it definitely was a year where they did not spread it around. It was a handful that got everything, and that was it, which is not uncommon for the Oscars. But it was one of those years.
Some people are really into this sort of thing, and I just couldn't care.
That's why I thought I would mention it, but not going to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. All right, Rob, so what did you watch this week?
Yes, I just took in one movie this week, which was Booksmart. Booksmart was, I think, Olivia Wilde's directing debut for like a full-length feature. I think that was sort of the news at the time. I believe it was 2019 this movie came out. This is one where I think my personal viewing of it wasn't entirely fair or optimal because I watched Booksmart after I had already seen Bottoms. And there are many, many similarities between these two movies, but Booksmart did come out first, and I would recommend if you have not seen either of those movies, watch Booksmart first and then watch Bottoms second, because Bottoms is more absurdist. It is much more heightened and goes into...
Oh, so this seemed tame to you.
That's comparison. Right. And like they're very similar themes, and these two girls in high school, a little bit outcast, a little bit outside of the popular group and all that for slightly different reasons, but similar sentiments and similar feelings. The idea that they haven't really connected with the other girls in the school, and they've basically this is their last chance, that the fairly well-worn tropes in high school dramas in that, but the awkwardness and all of those types of things, coming of age and all of that, and so a lot of similarities, but I found Bottoms a whole lot funnier than Booksmart, and but not because Booksmart was not good in any sort of way. It was just that Bottoms is the much more absurdist, over the top and laugh out loud funny version of this. So Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein are the two leads. Both of them very good. Caitlin Dever is just tremendously likable in everything that she does, and plays the innocent type of person really, really, really well. I am going to be very interested to see what they end up doing with Caitlin Dever. She has been cast as Abby for the second season of The Last of Us. And if you're familiar with the games at all, it is integral to the character of Abby that she is very muscular, and a huge part of her character arc is and pre-story is that she has physically trained herself for reasons that are become very apparent at the beginning of the Last of Us Part 2, the video game. Caitlin Dever does not fit that mold. She is she looks very small on screen. As far as I know, she's like 5'2", 5'3", and she is a very thin, very watchable and good actress, but does not fit the physical mold at all. Could she get that buff? I don't see how she could. So I'm kind of wondering if The Last of Us Season 2 is actually going to take place in between the two parts of the video game, and we're going to actually get her backstory much more so than just jumping into where that character character begins in the video game in part 2, because it doesn't all seem to line up. I don't know how they would adapt it. The physicality is so much a part of the character in the game. So interesting casting there, but yeah, her in Booksmart was probably my favorite performance in there, although Billie Lourd is in there. Playing a high school senior, even though she was pushing 30 at the time. So, and yes, everybody in this movie looks like they're in their mid-20s because they were, and they're supposed to be high school seniors, but they do not look or act like high school seniors very much at all. But Billie Lourd is by far the most over the top in this, and doing a lot of the comedy lifting in this, and she was very entertaining as well. So yeah, I give it a thumbs up, but it had a little bit of the shine taken off of it because I had already seen Bottoms of like, yeah, these are so similar, and I liked Bottoms even better. So that was my take on Booksmart.
I didn't really watch much this week. I saw one more episode of Ahsoka, which was good. Fine. Yes. Maybe one in a little bit. I don't remember. I don't actually remember. It's just been a very busy week, and my wife had a movie party at the house.
Okay.
For her friends. The guests, they had all talked about maybe going out to see Oppenheimer because one of them has a PhD in physics and wanted to, they all wanted to go see Oppenheimer together, but they couldn't make it work for whatever reason. I think somebody got COVID or something. I don't remember. And so my wife promised when we got the home theater back together that we would.
That's right.
They would have an Oppenheimer.
Nice.
So I was not invited.
Okay. Tom was not in his own home theater during the viewing.
I was in the room next door talking with the husband.
Did you at least hear some of it coming through the door?
I did. I'll tell you, I do think that the solid core door made a big difference in how loud the sounds were that came through that came through there. I don't know that it wasn't soundproof. They didn't make it soundproof, obviously. Yes. But it did decrease the amount of sound transfer from the home theater to there, because I turned it up to -10, which is about as much as I think my wife can really tolerate in here. And I went and I think like I usually don't have it much higher than a couple of dB higher than that.
Sure.
Like 7.5, something like that is usually where I would keep it for a movie. So it was, fairly loud for my home theater. And certainly the beginning of the movie, I was like, geez, something's blowing up in there.
There is some stamping of feet made to sound like explosives. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I did not watch it. So I'm going to call it the Notpenheimer.
Okay.
That's what I watched. I watched Oppenheimer.
A few little rumbles that made it through to the other room. That's right. Tom's experience of Oppenheimer.
So yeah, and for those of you that are like, oh, those home theater geek guys, they all they care about is home theater. Yeah, my amp's still clipping or clicking, and this is what I've managed to do. I've gone over there. I've turned the volume to a point where I'm like, this will surely make it not clip. It's too low for it not to clip, and it's still clicking.
Okay.
So
there's something else. Power supply issue, something going on.
Something's going on with it. So I did the as you would expect, I tore my entire theater apart and rebuilt everything. No, I turned it off and forgot about it all week long.
Because it is just your top middles.
It's my top middle, so my top fronts are still working, but
That's
my top
right.
middles are not. So, and some of the sounds that might be into the bed layer have been pulled up to the top middles, except the top middles are off, so they're gone. So, and guess what? Didn't really notice. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Didn't really notice.
Not all of your wife's friends didn't come pouring out of your home theater saying,
something's wrong in here. The sound's all messed up.
I know there's supposed to be a sound in those top middle speakers because they're all very familiar with that, I'm certain.
Yeah, sure.
And,
all right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask by emailing us a question at avrant.com. Come to the website. We're going to show notes, our Flickr albums, our older episodes. You can click on the audio and listen to it there if you want to.
Links to things that we say we're going to link to, sometimes products, sometimes articles, those sorts of things, all very handy in written form.
That's right, for those of you that don't want to Google it yourself. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. You can reach Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and send us a PayPal donation. So this week, we want to thank Adriano for doing this. So thank you very much, Adriano.
PayPal, Adriano, thank you very much for sending in that donation. It's a big help, and we appreciate your financial support.
We also want to, if you want to support us monthly,
automatically,
you can do that through PayPal, but most people want to do it through Patreon, patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Sign up to become a monthly contributor, and every month they'll take some money from you, give most of it to us. So right now we have 130 patrons, including James. So thank you very much to our patrons.
Yeah, once again, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 130 patrons over there. James, thank you for being one of them.
If you can't support us financially, support us in some other way, and we'll mention you here. Justin sent a movie code for either of us to check for him. I don't know that I checked the last movie code.
I checked it, and it actually worked in Canada on iTunes. So too bad, Tom, you missed out there. But thank you, Justin. That's actually a movie I did want to watch, so that's going to be nice.
All right. Aaron hadn't sent Rob a Canada-only movie code to check for a while, but he was back this week.
That's right.
Rob got some more movie codes to check out for him to make sure that they worked.
That's how it goes, and thank you very much, Aaron.
We also got some notes of gratitude from keeping the podcast going from J. Karl. And J. Karl says, any chance my clicking two-channel amp is caused by its auto turn-on signal sensing feature? Nope. It's not that complicated of an amplifier. It's on or off, Bubba. That's all it is. That's a good thought, though. That is actually a really good thought, because a lot of times they do click when they do that. This is not that.
Okay.
But good. Eric says, congrats on episode 900. Tom's getting his theater back, on me getting my theater back, and Rob getting a G3 OLED.
Yep.
We got notes from Aaron, Dan, James, who's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club, and Dazz. So thank you to all of you for thanking us.
Yes, indeed. I'll say those names one more time. J. Karl, Eric, Aaron, Dan, James, and Dazz. Thank you very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We very much appreciate it. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right.
Tom's chewing ice.
I am. I'm sorry.
It's ice chewing this week.
I'm very. I'm usually more controlled than this one. I'm half asleep over here. So IMAX has launched, this is in the news here, IMAX has launched a dedicated app for the Apple Vision Pro headset just in time for all the people to have just returned their Apple Vision Pro headsets because the 14-day window expired a bit ago.
A little bit ago, but some people still got them.
It's offering some features we haven't been able to access at home before. The current catalog includes IMAX documentaries that were shot using IMAX certified cameras, such as A Beautiful Planet and Pandas. There aren't any Hollywood movies or IMAX enhanced titles, so I hope you like documentaries. I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do like documentaries,
and some of them are spectacular to look at. Yeah. So that is the point of this particular app.
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of the sound effects you hear in those documentaries are post.
Okay.
A lot of times they're filming these things from so far away,
also the IMAX cameras are still loud if they're doing it on the actual film ones. The digital ones, I'm sure, must be quieter at this point. But yeah, a lot of this is still
close,
shot
so
on the full film.
You can take those sound effects with a grain of salt. But for the first time at home, these IMAX documentaries can be viewed in their full 1.43 to 1 aspect ratio. Previous home releases of these titles on Blu-ray either filled the standard 16:9 HD TV aspect ratio or used a digital IMAX 1.9 to 1 versions. These Apple Vision Pro camera versions are available in 3D. If that was available during their IMAX theater release, so you can see them in 3D. The IMAX app, so Rob's gonna buy an IMAX Pro immediately. I mean,
it's starting to make a case for itself here.
It's already on order. Surely they should be showing up on Facebook Marketplace by now. Surely.
I don't know. I'm waiting for version 2. And for it to be available in Canada, because you can't even order them in Canada. It's US only at the moment.
Oh, whatever. That's right. The IMAX app for Apple Vision Pro gives you the choice of 3 virtual seating locations, front, middle, or back. If the back one doesn't have you facing backwards, I really don't know.
Back of the theater, of course.
It's like staring at a wall. You got to turn around in your seat to see the screen. Be awesome. The Apple Vision Pro is also the only way to watch movies at home in 4K resolution, HDR, high frame rate, and 3D all at the same time.
Yeah.
The Apple TV app and Disney Plus app both support all of these features, so maybe there are reasons to spend $3,500 to watch movies alone with a hot, heavy mask on your face after all. Yeah,
it's getting very compelling.
You're selling it. Selling it.
So I mean, it is the micro OLED displays, even tinier pixels than what you find on an OLED TV. Micro OLED displays that do have perfect black levels. So it was funny because I've seen these described as like, oh yeah, you can watch it in any aspect ratio without black bars. I'm like, no, it is surrounded by black bars. Yeah. That is what virtual reality is. But those black bars are absolutely zero nit black thanks to those micro OLED displays. So yeah, as long as you get a good face seal, don't have any light leaking in from around your nose or that type of thing, you can have a very compelling experience inside of there. So we haven't had any format that we could purchase at home that would let us watch 3D in 4K resolution, because 3D has been exclusive to Blu-ray until now, and it wasn't available via streaming, but now it is in this format. And then high frame rate, HDR, Dolby Vision, in fact, all at the same time. And then spatial audio, right? It's a form, sometimes the headphone version of Dolby Atmos or a proprietary spatial audio form. So this isn't going to your full theater type of experience, but you can do the spatial audio experience with some spatial audio headphones.
I am very opinionated on the spatial audio thing right now. I'm going to be honest with you. I had a very long conversation during Oppenheimer, or my Notpenheimer experience, where I was sitting there talking about headphones with this friend of mine, and he's like, well, what's the deal? And I explained it to him. He goes, well, when would you use that? I'm like, I don't know.
When you're watching a virtual movie, you want the sound locked to the virtual screen. So when you turn your head, it's like turning your head in real life.
So what he said is, if you were using headphones and playing a flight simulator, makes sense.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
But let's just take all of this. Too? Let's just think about all these things, right?
Yeah.
So when would you use spatial audio? And the answer is almost never. It's really
I don't know about that. I mean, driving games as well, first-person shooters as well. I mean, all of those things where it's a perspective where it makes sense for the sounds to stay seemingly virtually statically located.
First-person shooters, really? I don't know about that. So
you want the sounds to stay where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. I just it's such a to me, it's and now they're calling everything spatial audio. It's
that is a problem, yeah.
And same thing with AI. It's like, oh, it's AI. No, it's just the same algorithms we've always had that do noise reduction.
It has become overused and overgeneralized, and it is difficult to tell. Yes.
Now it's spatial audio. Is it just simulates surround sound? And that's spatial audio.
That should be referred to as immersive audio is also getting called spatial audio. So it is all getting confused. I don't blame consumers for not actually knowing what the heck it is supposed to mean.
Anyways, I think there's a very small subset of people that will ever want to use spatial audio, and even then they only want to use it in a very small subset of situations, in which case stamping the name of it on top of everything as if it is a selling point,
that's right,
is disingenuous at best. And for most people, it's just confusing. They're like, I don't even know what this thing is. And when you describe it, they're like, I would never use this, so why do you keep talking about it like it's such a big deal?
To be clear, I don't really think hardly anybody should buy the current Apple Vision Pro. I don't think it's a first generation device, and I don't think it's where Apple wants it to be. That's pretty clear, and I don't really think it's something you should race out and buy. But that doesn't mean I'm against the Apple Vision Pro as an idea, because I do think second and third generations are very much going to improve on what we've seen in this first generation. I can see a compelling case moving forward. If the price comes down and the experience gets that much better, I can see it being a very compelling thing in the not too distant future.
Just think how much it'll cost then, though. I mean, it's already $3,500 for the alpha version.
I think it'll get less expensive. I think that price will come down over time.
I don't know. Last year, Disney dipped their toe into releasing Disney Plus shows on Ultra HD Blu-ray physical media. Season 1 of Loki, WandaVision, and Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian must have been a success, because Disney has announced 4 more Disney Plus shows coming to disc on April 30th. I did hear about this. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, honestly not one I would buy on disc. I don't not like that show. I'm not like, I don't hate that show, or I liked it. I liked it fine, but it's one of the very few Disney Plus shows that I have not gone back to rewatch because I'm like,
yeah,
it was fine. Moon Knight, which I did rewatch, Star Wars Obi-Wan, I have not rewatched it but would, and Star Wars Andor, which I have not rewatched but would, and it's because it's long, have been announced, and you can pre-order them now. Disney is using 3-layer 100 gigabit discs and keeping the Dolby Atmos soundtracks exclusive to the Ultra HD Blu-ray versions. Regular Blu-ray versions get 5.1 DTS HD master audio, and the discs get HDR10, no Dolby Vision.
So they're keeping Dolby Vision exclusive to Disney Plus streaming, but that's really quite all right. I'm not worried about that.
So the streaming music service TIDAL is greatly simplifying their subscription tiers. I don't know what it looks like, but if it's not like some sort of weird flow chart to begin with, I'm going to be like disappointed if I click on that link. And it's doing something we very rarely see. They are lowering their prices.
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't think anybody does it. TIDAL Free, which I think costs nothing. TIDAL Hi-Fi and TIDAL Hi-Fi Plus are all going away. And now there will just be TIDAL Individual, TIDAL Family, and TIDAL Student.
Yeah.
Individual will be $11 a month starting April 10th. That matches competitors' prices, but you get to keep TIDAL's lossless streaming quality and Dolby Atmos music. So it's in effect a $9 a month price reduction.
Yeah.
So because it was $20 before.
It was $20 before if you wanted lossless and Apple Music access. So you can't really complain. You're keeping all the features, and the price is going down by $9 a month. Not bad.
So they seem to be done with managing ads and ad partners, so TIDAL Free is going away completely. It will stop working April 10th, and if you want to keep listening to TIDAL, you'll have to pay $11 a month. So that is a price increase by infinity.
Yes, yes, very much so. Yeah, but they're while everyone else is racing to add commercials to their streaming services, titles like, yep, we're done with that. We're not going to bother with ads anymore.
TIDAL Family goes from $30 a month down to $17 a month. And again, it'll still be lossless, and Dolby Atmos music will still be available. The only wrinkle is for DJs. I didn't realize DJs were a thing, but let's go. They are official TIDAL extensions that let DJs legally use and manipulate tracks from TIDAL on certified equipment. Those rights used to be included in TIDAL Hi-Fi Plus, but now DJs have to pay a separate $9 a month fee. In effect, though, the price remains the same at $20 a month. That's $11 a month for TIDAL Individual, $9 a month for TIDAL extensions. I'm sorry, for the DJ extensions.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
So, overall, I mean, I can't complain. You know, they're not jacking up the prices for once, other than if you were on the free tier.
And no one minds it if you stick it to the DJs, let's be honest.
Well, and they're not. The price is the same. So they're just saying if you want...
DJs as a whole. Just the people named it. The people who are it. They got it coming. That's what I say. Stick it to the DJs.
All right. Well, they're not. They're keeping the price the same. You just have to be aware that it is an extension, so you can optionally remove it now if you weren't making use of it and lower your price. The student version remains at $5 a month, so still a pretty good deal there.
All right. I'm a student of life, Rob.
Yes.
Does that count?
Maybe.
I'm always learning, Rob.
I don't know if you can send in the receipts for that.
What if I print my own student ID card?
Could be.
Student of life.
Get it accredited. Off you go.
Accredited Life University.
I'm sure it'll be worth the $6 a month savings on TIDAL, because I know how important that is to you.
And yeah, considering how much I pay for TIDAL right now.
That's right.
We have no questions or no comments this week. With no zero comments.
Well, there are a couple comments, but they're included amongst the questions, so I just kept it all together so that it went by person instead of by section.
All right. As we remember last week, Rob, not this one, different one.
Different
has had a question. So
couple of them.
So this Rob's living situation has changed, and he's basically buying a new system from scratch. He uses Plex a lot. And he used to have both an NVIDIA Shield and an Apple TV, older versions of both. Frankly, he preferred using the Apple TV for most streaming services, but the Shield was better for Plex.
All agreed. Correct.
So now that he's buying a whole new setup, he'd rather just have a single streaming device if he can get away with it. Which is best for Plex these days? Can the newest Apple TV 4K just do everything now? And is Dolby Vision worth worrying about? Well, he didn't tell us what TV he has. So,
well, that's because he hasn't purchased a television just yet.
Well, there you go. He's going from scratch, like truly from scratch.
Yeah, there's going to be new TV and a new sound system. We'll be talking about that next. But the answer straight up for this one is the NVIDIA Shield Pro is still your best choice if Plex
you should just get an Apple Vision.
Service.
Just get the Apple Vision.
It's
got
Pro
spatial
headset.
audio and 3D. And you can get the IMAX stuff now.
I don't know if there's a version of Plex for the Apple Vision Pro. I don't know if that works in there.
You don't need the Plex. You're going to have the IMAX.
Anyway, he's got a Plex library. If you want to watch Plex in the highest quality possible for everything that you might have stored in that Plex library of yours, the NVIDIA Shield Pro is still your best choice. Now, how uncomfortable would it be to have only an NVIDIA Shield Pro and no longer have an Apple TV 4K for your other streaming services? So the Apple TV 4K is still the best choice in my opinion if you really, really care about matching the frame rate to the original source. If you want to have 24 frames per second come out as 24 frames per second, or 23.976 come out as that, or go up to 30 or 29.97 or whatever it might be, the Apple TV 4K in general, because it is still app specific and there are a handful of apps here and there that don't work even with the Apple TV 4K when it comes to perfect frame rate matching, but in general, it is still the best choice for perfect frame rate matching. The NVIDIA Shield Pro, they've had all kinds of updates over the years that have to do with automatic frame rate matching, but none of them really work. It still doesn't work properly. The thing is, since you will be buying a new TV coming up, we know that with the next question coming up here, if you get a television that itself is very good at doing the inverse telecine, so that is the source device is just sending out 60 frames per second all the time, regardless of what the original signal was. But then the television is able to detect that, okay, I'm getting a 60 frames per second from the source device, but the original signal was 24 or 23.976. And there are many televisions where the processing is good enough now that they can do the inverse 3.2 and the inverse telecine and bring you back to judder-free performance, even though you're feeding it 60 frames per second. If you combine those things, then I'm very happy to leave my NVIDIA Shield Pro just outputting 60 frames per second all the time, as long as my television is good enough to process it back to being judder free. So that's really about the only thing. Because I mean, if you Dolby Vision either way works, it works on the NVIDIA Shield Pro. So whether you use it or not, it's ready to go if you want to use it. There is the question of if you are really bothered by interstitial black screens every time there's any sort of format change, whether that's a change from SDR to HDR or back, or a change in frame rate, or a change in resolution. If you prefer to leave everything locked in one format so that you never get HDMI handshakes and black screens in between things, then once again, the Apple TV 4K is sort of the best at just putting everything into a Dolby Vision container, including standard dynamic range content, and not messing up the colors when it does that. Whereas it can be a little hit and miss occasionally on the NVIDIA Shield Pro. If you just leave it as Dolby Vision 100% of the time, then when it tries to convert SDR into Dolby Vision, it doesn't always nail that perfectly, and sometimes you end up with overexposed or underexposed images. I've come across that. And again, it's app to app, it's content to content, but that does happen more often in my experience with the NVIDIA Shield Pro still. So NVIDIA Shield Pro can be set to be Dolby Vision ready, HDR10 ready, so it will switch into those formats when appropriate in response to the signal, but that will mean there'll be a black screen that goes in there as it changes between HDR and SDR. So a few little things to be aware of there, but I don't think it's that bad an experience just going NVIDIA Shield Pro 100% of the time, and that's the device that I would go with, particularly for Plex. If you want the lossless audio from your Blu-ray backups and that, then that's still the way you gotta go.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at amps to replace my amp.
Of course you were. Just get the Fosse, the 7493. You know that's what
I am looking. That is exactly what I'm looking at, but I'm like, I don't want a volume knob. 7493 or 98?
Or 98, yeah, whatever it is. 7498, some letter on the end of it.
It's only $63.
Well, that's the thing.
So ridiculously cheap.
It's top middle,
like, it's Tom.
You'll be all right.
It's so much cheaper than the amp that I have, which I thought was way too cheap to begin with. It's like things shouldn't go down in price this much. So he needs a new TV, and needs a new sound system, and he's interested in it being maximum bang for the buck. Nice, but not overspending. But no overspending, I'm sorry. So if we were starting from scratch, what setup would we put together? Well, you would either have to get an OLED, which is what I would get, because I would not compromise.
Right.
If I'm buying a new TV, I'm getting OLED. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I know that you can like, oh well, the full array local dimming with all the dimming zones and stuff can be very no. I'm not buying another TV and compromising there. Like so, I wrote an article not that long ago that was basically what's more important, like performance or size when it comes to TVs,
right.
and what the article basically says. You need to choose what is your minimum performance level that you're willing to accept. Okay, whatever that might be. So if you are, I literally don't care what the TV looks like. It's going to be in a well-lit room, and it's going to be on torch mode all the time, and I just don't care what it's going to look like. Then you just go, you pick the size you want, and you get the cheapest one. Sure. You don't even really worry
Which is very clearly what a lot of people do, going by what is the most popular TV at Best Buy or Costco right this second, and it is the biggest, cheapest TV. That's almost always the most popular.
For people who are on this podcast, who listen to this podcast, who are hosts on this podcast, we have a minimum level that's a little bit higher than that. Indeed. And it might be, you might be okay with, like, I just need at least, 200 zones of local dimming or something like that. You made up some number in your head.
Right.
And as long as I've got that, then I feel that's good enough performance to me. I'm probably not going to notice the blooming all that much, and then it's going to be fine. And I would be okay with that. Then you find your TV, and then you get the size you want, and then you're good to go. But you need to figure out what your minimum performance. For me, I'm not accepting anything other than the OLED.
Yeah. And the good news is, if you're shopping right now, the C3 OLEDs that, of course, came out in 2023, those LG C3 OLEDs are very much on sale right now. Some quite attractive prices. I would be pointing myself at the moment towards a 77-inch C3 in all likelihood. Now, we don't know the particulars of Rob's room here.
Yes, we don't.
Not Rob, third person Rob. Rob, the person we're talking to, Rob, because we both have the same name. But we don't know the particulars of your room, so we don't know your seating distance at the moment. We don't know what type of cubic footage of air you are trying to fill. It sounded from his email like he's downsizing a bit, so I don't think we're going to a massive upsize in the room. That he didn't say that explicitly, but that was reading between the lines what it sounded like to me. So to me, you can make a go of a nice home theater experience with a 77-inch TV, as long as you're willing to sit 7.5 feet away from it, that type of distance. So if you're going to a downsizing situation, that might be very, very comfortable anyway. $2,500 right now over at Best Buy for the 77-inch C3. You could, of course, step up to the 83-inch, which is around the $3,500 mark right now on sale. So the thing is there, that's what I would go for. I own a G3 now. I don't really think it's worth or important to spend $1,000 more for the same size to get the G3. If you're at the 77-inch size, it does have the micro lens array panel. And the vast majority of the time, there's no visible difference. If you live for the HDR highlights, then that's where it might be worth it to you. But if you're just no, I care about the vast majority of the time, which again, I was inferring from the way that Rob wrote his email that's where he's at. The C3 is where you should go. If that's too expensive, and I can absolutely understand that because we're talking about $2,500 or $3,500, and that's not chump change, then I would probably almost certainly in my case go with TCL QM8. Mm-hmm. I've talked about Sony's mini LED backlit LCD TVs that I do think are very, very nice and very, very good. And they have the sort of processing that I talked about where they can absolutely detect 24 frames per second embedded within a 60 hertz signal and do an excellent job of doing the inverse telecine. The LG C3s also do that really, really well. So again, it puts the C3 right at the top of my recommended list. But the Sony, the X93L or the X95L, they're at exactly the same prices or in sometimes $100 more than the C3s right now. So I don't see a compelling reason to switch to a Sony mini LED TV when the price is the same or in fact perhaps a little bit less to get a C3 OLED. I would absolutely go for the C3 OLED dollar for dollar. But if I want to save some money or go to a larger screen size at the same price, I want to get 85-inch or a 98-inch, right? Then the TCL QM8 definitely delivers that sort of bang for buck. Lots of local dimming zones, mini LED backlights, but I'm so persnickety about any trace of blooming, and of course you're going to have a little bit of it when you got a local dimming TV. The processing in it is not quite as good as the LG C3 OLED or Sony's processing, so you could get a little bit of that judder if you're not feeding it a native 24 frames per second signal. It's those types of small quirks, but it would allow you to get like the 85-inch for less than the 77-inch C3 OLED. So if price is a bigger factor and size is a bigger factor, which are 100% legitimate reasons to make that type of choice, I would probably go for a TCL QM8. If you need to go even less expensive than that, the TCL Q7s are still very nice looking full array local dimming LCD TVs, and I would not be upset at all to own a nice big TCL Q7. So that would be another choice.
All right. Oh, yeah. Now we're going to talk about receivers next.
Yes. That'll be the next part.
Again, we don't. I'm not scrolling, right? No, I'm not. So, again, with receivers, the thing that you need to do is figure out what you are actually going to use. I say this over and over again on this podcast.
Because there's nothing wrong at stopping at 5.2.
That's right.
Nothing wrong with that.
There is something wrong with stopping at 5.1, but not 5.2. 5.2, you can
we
stop
can be
at.
Very happy stopping at that channel count.
So in your room, I don't want to hear, oh, well, someday I might want to. No. If you say someday you might want to, just assume that it's not going to happen forever.
Yeah.
And for long enough that when you do it, you will actually think about upgrading your receiver at the same time. Remember, you can get a lot of these things from accessories for less.
That's where I would go for sure.
Pick, like for me, there's usually a channel count that I care about.
Yep.
And there's a room correction level that I care about. And one of those two things will encompass the other one. So either I will, if I need this many channels, 9 channels, we'll say, you're probably already at the highest level of room correction anyways. And so you pick the receiver. And there's a couple out there. There's the Onkyo that's really good. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of Denons that are like right there as far as price and performance is concerned. And everybody knows which ones they are, right? Except for me off the top of my head. But Rob does. So, but they exist, and if you care about, the only thing I would warn you against is don't get caught up in the hype of Direct versus Odyssey. Like, don't
overspend to get one over the other. They can be very comparable. Although I will say, if you want ease of use, I find Odyssey easier.
Odyssey by
use.
Far, yes.
Sure.
So it's not even close.
That could be a very legitimate consideration. If you're like, I don't want to mess around with having to learn a new system, then Odyssey is the easier to use. And Denon's wizard, the setup wizard, I think is really well done. It walks you right through. So if you're like, you know what, I haven't set up more than 2 speakers in a long time, I might need some familiarity to double check me as I go along and make sure that I've connected everything correctly and have it all nicely calibrated. I'm like, I really like that Denon wizard. So I'll sort of go top down. Like if you were like, yep, I know I'm going for 9 or 11 speakers and I want a top flight room correction system built in, the one I'm going to suggest to you also has the option of paying more to add Dirac to it if you're like, Dirac's super important to me and I'm willing to spend more to get it. Denon's X30-800H pretty much has every feature that anybody could need, unless like, I don't think he'd even be asking this question if he's like, I know I want 15 speakers and nothing less. I don't think he'd even be asking. So, the X3800H has 9 amplifiers built in, so it can do a 5.2.4 Atmos setup natively, but it can process 11 speakers. So if you want a full 7.2, or in fact 7.4.4, because the X3800H has 4 subwoofer preouts if you want to do that. But if you want to do that full system, it can. You just have to add an external 2-channel amp. Full set of pre-outs. So if you are actually in a larger room than I was inferring that you are from the language in the email, if it actually is a much larger space, you can add a full set of external amplification if you need to. And then over at Accessories for Less, it's going for $1,000 for their normal refurbished unit. At the moment that we're recording this, they're sold out of those units, but they have open box units for $1,200. So that's the sort of price range there. I could absolutely understand if you're like, nope, I got a small space, I don't need 9 speakers, or I do want 9 speakers, but I want to pay a bit less. There is a 9-channel model from Onkyo, the TX NR7100. Accessories for Less is selling it for $700 refurbished. Nice pricing is there. It stops at 9. It stops at 9 speakers. It does not go to 11, and you can only use the built-in 9. Yeah, you can only use the built-in 9 amplifiers. It does not have a set of pre-outs, so there are some limitations there, but it comes with Dirac. Dirac is not extra in the NR7100 from Onkyo, and that's a pretty nice system. You will, though, if you want to do the full computer version, need to add your own USB mic, but you can run the smartphone app version of Dirac with the mic that is bundled in with the Onkyo. So they give you those options right there, and you can do a 9-channel setup for $700, and if you're in a smaller space where the built-in amps are totally sufficient, that's a pretty nice option right there. The other one is if you're like, I don't need 9 speakers, 5 or 7 is all I could ever need. $600 gets you Denon's X2800H, and that's a fabulous option right there as well. So something in there, that's from Accessories for Less again. So something in there I think will check the needs that you might have.
Yes. And then we're going to go to what? Subwoofers?
Some speakers. Speakers, I think. Yeah, speakers and subs. It's all going to be together there.
So, I mean, it is almost... You kind of pick a budget with speakers, and you can decide what it is that you want to have. Now, your room, of course, is going to make a big difference as far as...
Room makes a huge difference. I mean, particularly for the choice of subwoofer model.
Clearly for subwoofers, it makes the biggest difference. But even for regular speakers, if you're going to be sitting 6 feet away, you can buy completely different speakers than if you're going to be sitting 12 feet away.
That's right.
There's a pretty large difference there as to the amount of output. And if your theater space is part of a larger room and also connected to the rest of the house, then that makes a big difference in your speakers as well as your subwoofers. So we need to know that information. So we can make some general recommendations here.
Yeah.
But the idea...
you can sort of look at the brands we're going to mention, and then they have larger or smaller offerings. But these are sort of brands that we're like, we stand behind. We feel pretty comfortable getting any of these for ourselves or having somebody else go out and get them. And the chances that they're not going to be able to match their needs to the brands we're going to talk about, pretty low. So
yeah. And remember that SVS is blowing out their Ultra Series.
Their original Ultra Series on massive clear out sale right now.
I would snap those up in a heartbeat.
That would be a very nice option. There is a chance that the Ultra Series is too large for your space.
It could be.
Because even the bookshelf and the Ultra Center, not tiny speakers. So if this is like going into a compact spare bedroom, like a 9-foot by 11-foot room or something like that, they could be a bit too big. So
you could shoehorn them in there if you really wanted to.
That's probably
what I mean?
True.
I mean, it depends on how... because they're not the kind of speaker that need a ton of air to resolve.
Yes.
They don't need to be far away from you.
That's right. And on the flip side, if you've got a pretty big room, they can handle a pretty big room. So unless you have a huge room, those SVS Ultra speakers could be a very good deal to snap up right now.
So if you remember a while back, we talked about there's that chart over at AVS or AVS Forum or whatever it is. I don't remember which one that was. That basically went through subwoofers and showed you like which ones, how much, what's the cubic volume of air and whether or not they could hit reference level essentially. And so I wrote all that up into an article. Is my subwoofer big enough? That explains not that talks about the what it is, why it is, and then tells you how to read it as well.
Yeah.
So I've linked that up here. This will help you. It links over to the article. I didn't steal their graphic or anything. It links over there, so you'll have to flip between the different tabs. I'm sorry for that, but I'm not going to steal somebody else's stuff, especially somebody who did so much work. And it just helps you read it, and it explains some of the things like what does it mean when you're when you get more than one subwoofer in there and the numbers change, or is it important that you always get to a positive or a negative, whatever whatever the one that's the good side. I don't remember how it goes right now, but it kind of will walk you through that. So you can, we're going to suggest, of course, SVS. I mean, I've already suggested it for their
SVS
speakers.
For subs, the likelihood that you can't find a model in SVS's lineup that fits your room needs, there's almost no chance of that. I'm going to specifically mention the cylinder subs because if you're like, I have a medium to large sized room, I need more output than a compact sealed sub can actually deliver. But I don't have
about floor space.
The footprint. I need the small footprint. We love those cylinder subs. They come with the subwoofer isolation feed is already part of the price, and getting the duals of the PC2000 Pros is $2,100. So that's one I'll call out specifically. But if that doesn't fit your needs, there's a ton of other SVS models. Staying on the subwoofer tip, we definitely like the Monoprice monolith subs. They are big. big black boxes, so physically be aware of that. But price-wise, they can beat SVS just in terms of raw output and extension for similar big box sizes.
Over at AV Gadgets, I think Andrew reviewed like the M10. Yeah. It might have been the M12. I think it was the M10.
The M10 is the smallest they have. It probably would be my favorite $650 sub these days because it can dig right down to 20 hertz and do a heck of a good job of it at that price. And there isn't anything less expensive that's really fully doing that anymore. But on the smaller side of things, right? Again, if this is a spare bedroom that you're putting this in and you need everything to be smaller and less expensive, RSL has some very nice offerings, including our very favorite under $500 subwoofer by a country mile, which is their Speedwoofer 10S, which is perpetually sold out, but they have more stock coming in all the time, so you basically get on the back order list whenever you know that that's what you're going to want to get. So $450 for those Speedwoofer 10Ss. They are not designed for a large room. They are a small to medium room, but if that's what you have, if you got a converted bedroom, they're a fantastic choice for that, and you want to keep the price down. And then RSL's own speakers, you can buy them in bundles like the CG23M thing that is, $1,050 that comes with one subwoofer. We'd want to add a second one. So for $1,500 on the nose, you can have 2 subs, 5 speakers, really nice speakers, perfect for like a bedroom setup, and that's a really nice price. So something like that. Personally, since he did ask about us personally, I am going to look at Ascend. Price-wise, I'm going to look at either their Signature Series or their Sierra Series, depending on how much money I want to spend. So that's another brand that I will point you to, and you can have a look around Ascend Acoustics website to see if there's something that tickles your fancy there. I'm a big fan of their bamboo cabinet that they have on the Sierra Series. I think that's a fantastic thing that they're offering at a price that you're not going to find elsewhere. But yeah, I think between those brands, you're going to find something that really suits your needs.
Yeah. And there's others out there. Let's be honest. I mean, if you're... we talk about HSU all the time. They have speakers and subwoofers that you could choose from. That's right. We talk about even Klipsch, the Reference Premiere series, if you're looking for something more mainstream that I don't know.
And if you got a really big room and don't want to spend a pile on amplifiers, then HSU or Klipsch Reference Premiere could be the absolute top choice. For sure.
So it's not. Yeah, you asked us what we only have. We have experience with what we have experience with, but that does not mean that there's not other options out there that are just as good or maybe even better for your particular application. So just keep that in mind. And the price points here are really middling. The differences between them exist, but it's not like...
But this isn't the cheapest stuff out there, but it was like, he wants that bang for the buck. This is the bang for the buck, and hopefully that sort of narrowed down the exhaustive list that could be out there.
Yeah. There's also quite a few monoprice speakers out there that they're selling these days that are certainly worth it. If you wanted to keep it all monolith, or monoprice. The only thing I've heard, and I have not experienced this, of course, because I'm in an industry and they respond to me, but that you can have a hard time with monoprice's customer service if you do have an issue. But of course, that's if that is a concern from you, then you should just buy SVS and be done with it, because that is one thing they absolutely are known for. I guess HSU and Sen are probably both. Yep,
and RSL too. All of those brands really good to deal with.
Yeah. Dane has a basement home theater, very much not a rectangle. It's a sphere.
Nope,
sits in the bottom of it.
But it would be difficult to describe this shape, so we've got a diagram. It's not an L. It's not a rectangle. It's
down.
It's kind of like 2 separate L shapes kind of fitted together.
Do I remember this? I feel like I remember this.
It could be, but anyway. It's a sort of open basement shape. Yes.
It's if you are a player of Tetris, you might recognize the shape. It's one of those kind of shapes.
A couple of Tetris pieces put together.
All in all, he's dealing with about 5,000 cubic feet of air volume. There's a sliding barn-style door at the top of the stairs. It has a gap around it, so he isn't exactly soundproof or sealed. That's fine. No rooms are. But it does help somewhat with being able to pressurize the basement space with this SVS PB3000 sub. That's singular. Sounds like you should get another one. His ceiling is 7 foot 6 inches with white drop tiles. The walls are mostly light gray with white doors and trim, except for the front wall, which has been blacked out. Laminate floor with rugs and black acoustic panels on the front wall, back wall, and side walls in his theater area, not in the rest of the place.
That's right.
It's open all over the place. It's got a 105-inch projection screen and the ViewSonic X 747 4K projector, half recessed in the ceiling with a cutout for it in one of the drop tiles. Main seats are about 12.5 feet from the screen. His AV receiver is a Denon X1600H with monolith 365 in-wall speakers up front, monoprice alpha in-walls and surround backs, and ELAC in-walls as surrounds. I'm sorry, monoprice alpha as in-walls as surround backs, and the ELAC in-walls as surrounds. His sources are an Apple TV 4K and Xbox Series X.
So that's the equipment list. We know what we're dealing with here, and the room.
So the surround backs are kind of not super well positioned.
But he's dealing with the wall space that is allowed in this irregular shape.
That's right. Yep. That's right. He's doing what he can. His projector's lamp is nearing the end of its life, and he's thinking he might take the opportunity to upgrade the display entirely. Frankly, he likes the idea of switching to a 98-inch flat panel. Seems like it wouldn't be terribly difficult to just put it on a TV stand and achieve the same field of view he has now, but getting a new projector is not out of the question either. One of the main things he wants to improve is the input lag when he is gaming. He doesn't consider himself hardcore, but he does play first-person shooters online and can notice the amount of lag that he has right now. The Xbox Series X is hardwired, and he has a 500 megabit. Yeah, megabit. I have to think about that. Internet service. Are there settings you could change with his current setup that would decrease the input lag? Settings on the Xbox or his Denon receiver? He's already turned off the Denon's on-screen display. Or is this all the fault of his current ViewSonic projector? It is certainly the problem with the ViewSonic, I'll be honest with you.
It's the projector. Natively, the projector that you have has around 50 milliseconds of lag. There's no way to get it lower than that. There's nothing you can do.
There's a game mode. That's what you're looking for on all these things, is a game mode.
Well, even so, sometimes the game mode is 50 milliseconds, and that's better than the 150
Well, what I'm saying
milliseconds
is you're looking for game mode
to
to get to the lowest lag possible, not that.
But this is not the fault of your receiver, and there's nothing else you can do in your Xbox to make it any better.
Right. So yeah, I guess that was all that set up, and the question was, is it the problem with the projector? Okay,
well,
yes,
for that part.
It is. Yes, for that part. He could spend as much as $4,000 right now, or he could save up for a while if there's something really, really worth it. If he buys right now, that $4,000 would need to cover everything, so he's wondering if getting a new display will also demand getting a new AV receiver. What do we recommend that he buy? Well, I mean, we just talked about that 98-inch, whatever the heck it was from TCL.
Well,
right?
And there's a specific one, because if you're going to Best Buy right now, you're going to find the 98-inch, I think it's the Q5 or the S500 series, and you're going to find the 98-inch QM8. And I don't recommend the S550, that's ringing a bell. But I don't recommend that one. That doesn't have any local dimming whatsoever. It's just big size at a low price. And for some people, that's what they want, but I don't think that's really what you're going for here. The QM8 is over the budget that you're talking about in the 98-inch size. But there is still... This is actually from a couple of years ago, but it was still a current model until just last year, the 98-inch R754. And you can still get it. It is on clearance, but Walmart has it, Electronic Express has it, PC Richard has it, and those are official links from TCL's own website. If you go to the page listing for the 98 R754, they have the MSRP, which was $10,000, but right below there is a button that says where to buy, and they have the current prices. Like Walmart has it for $3,500. We're under that $4,000 budget that you said you have. I would 100% in the situation that you have recommend going with the flat panel. If you care about low input lag for gaming, this is under 16 milliseconds at the worst of times. And if you have VRR activated, it is under 6 milliseconds. You cannot get faster than that from anything really. So it is fantastic in terms of input lag. It is definitely beating the 50 milliseconds of your current ViewSonic projector, no question whatsoever. The 98-inch size, like you say, you put it on a stand, you can absolutely get the same field of view as you have with your 105-inch projection screen, no problem there. And then your room is not optimal for a projection setup. I'm not going to say it's bad. We got to live in the real world, but it's not optimal. You got the white ceiling, you got the light gray walls. All of those things are like, you put a flat panel in this room, you're going to get better performance. There's really no question about it.
Well, and also, we have to remember, like, we just started off this conversation with me talking about, in particular, my limit for what I'm willing to do. The reality is that if you put a really good LCD in this room, I would go, man, the black levels are so much better than my projector.
Yep.
Probably would be.
Yep.
And I think that's what you're going to experience.
Oh, you will definitely experience that compared to your ViewSonic, no question.
So, do you have to go all the way to OLED? You don't. And maybe you want to. Maybe that's what you're going to decide to do.
To get a 97-inch OLED is $25,000, so that really is a price difference between $3,500.
Yeah. So, there is that's what you have to kind of contend with there. But the $3,500, if you can get this for $3,500, you also have the $500 to spend on a piece of furniture to put underneath it.
That's for sure.
Which you'll probably need.
And the good news was, because he was like, does he also need to get a new AV receiver?
He does not, no.
You do not, because the AV receiver that he had, I don't know if I actually put that in the write-up, but he did mention in the email, your AV receiver does have eARC.
Yeah, so I actually looked it up to make sure. It does, yes.
Yeah, so there are two sides of this. One, if you're getting that R754, it does support all the things, other than the one thing the R754 I don't think will do is Dolby Vision with variable refresh rate at 120 frames per second. It'll cap you at 60 if it's Dolby Vision with VRR. But if you're like HDR10 with VRR, it'll go up to 120 frames per second. So it's like all the game things that your Xbox Series X could really possibly do.
Yeah.
If you want that, you will need to plug your Xbox Series X directly into one of the two HDMI 2.1 inputs on that R754 to get the maximum you could possibly get video-wise. But then you can use the eARC port to send full lossless audio all the way up to immersive audio back downstream to your current AV receiver. So there was no need for you to upgrade your AV receiver. On the flip side, if you were to plug your Xbox Series X into your current AV receiver and then pass the video along, you would just be capped at 60 frames per second. That's the only cap. And like, honestly, there aren't that many games on the Xbox Series X that are actually utilizing 120 frames per second. Capping them at 60 is typically what you want to do, as long as you don't want to sacrifice too much on the beauty and the image fidelity. So honestly, you don't need to buy a new AV receiver.
I agree. Bo, we have ourselves another audiophile who has found us and started questioning the advice he has been following. Oh, jeez.
Yep. Another case of, Bo, how much do you want to be deprogrammed?
Yes,
and honestly, from the way that he worded his email, it's like, I think he is like, wait a second.
If that's not true, then none of this is true.
Like maybe I don't need to be part of this cult.
We were talking, my wife and I were talking about cult behaviors the other day, and how so many things turn into cult-like behaviors, and it's like home theater and audio definitely has that. I mean, I wrote an article called "Audiophiles Are a Low Key Cult" or something like that, and they are. If you look at it, you're like, geez, this is exactly what they are.
And once again,
cycling's the same way. CrossFit is the same way.
Once again, Bo's quite a new listener, so Bo, we're making light of this. We're having a bit of laugh, but we are not laughing at you. No. There was everything he said in his email. I'm like, this all makes perfect sense. Yeah. There is zero blame from us towards you. It's nothing like that. We're just having a chuckle because it's like, honestly, we've kind of been through it ourselves.
Of course.
I don't think we Tom and I ever fully fell into the full audiophile cult side of things.
But I dipped my toe. I dipped my toe,
and I read so much of the marketing. But I'm old enough that I got into audio when it was still magazines. Print magazines was a lot of the ways that I got a lot of my audio information when I started out. And it's like, that marketing is really effective. And like some of the stuff like Def Tech was saying about bipolar tower speakers, like, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And like I wanted to buy some at some point. Like all those types of things. So
I know that Rob has bought into enough hype that he has ordered things from other countries, America, and got completely screwed.
We go through the learning process, so
sometimes it's costly.
We're very much chuckling as much at our own past experience as anything that you could possibly say to us. So please take it in the spirit in which it's intended. I just want to say that because sometimes people are like, "Hey, you're laughing at me. That doesn't feel very nice." No. So I want to preface all that and make sure that's clear.
We're not. This
absolutely
is,
not.
I remember saying something along the lines of always wanting X, whatever the X was. I don't remember what it was, and one of my compatriots when I was working just emailed, I think it was Clint, emailed me and was like, why did you say that? I'm like, I don't know, because this. He goes, that's all a bunch of BS, right?
It's like an automated response. The neural pathways just fire and you say call in response. Yeah, absolutely.
I was like,
happens.
no, I didn't know that was BS. Everybody says it. They're like, yeah, that's just what they say. Yeah. All right. He says he's only recently found our podcast and only had time to listen to a couple of episodes, but he's been impressed, and he'd like to get our suggestions regarding his 2-channel audio setup. Usually that is the perfect setup for me to immediately mock you. Okay, so I am not. I'm gonna.
There's
and this is
wrong
not
with having a lovely 2-channel audio.
No,
setup.
I know.
That's fantastic.
But usually I would say something along the line, put it on the street corner and sell it or something like that. But I'm not going to do that because you're a new listener. We're going to ease you into how obnoxious I can be. So I just know I'm controlling myself over here. I'm exerting lots of self-control. Anyways, so he uses a pair of B&W 800 D3 Diamond Series speakers. He really, really likes them. He doesn't have any desire to replace them. Fair enough.
And we are not going to insist on you replacing those speakers at all. Those are really, really nice speakers. So we're on a good starting point here.
For amplification with 4 Macintosh amplifiers along for 2 speakers.
Yeah, you got to buy amp them, right? Audiophiles, Tom. Audiophiles. It's not
for amplification, he went with 4 Macintosh amplifiers along with a Macintosh 2-channel preamp. His primary source device is a Mark Levinson network streamer.
It was more money than necessary to spend, but so once again, like the Macintosh amplifiers, you didn't have to spend that much.
Yeah.
But we don't have an actual problem with the performance of any of the equipment that you've purchased.
Yes, they all will do the thing that's on the box.
For us, like we don't have the level of income that you do, though those would be more expensive than we'd be looking at, and we can objectively say that we could achieve the same level of performance without spending as much money. But there's a big difference.
It wouldn't be as pretty. Let's start with that.
It wouldn't be as physically pretty as those Macintosh amps, and there's a big difference between getting ripped off in the sense of you paid a whole bunch of money and didn't get the performance level that you were expecting for that amount of money versus I spent more money than I absolutely needed to for strict performance, but I got other things like aesthetics or just pride of ownership or a brand name,
or as we were about to mention, resale value.
Those things as well, right?
You got that too.
We're not going to say, this isn't a case where you got ripped off because you got good performing equipment. So that's important to stress.
So he has a Control 4 system, and he uses his iPad to control everything. He has an audio dealer that he buys from, and on their advice, he completely rewired his entire system using AudioQuest Firebird cables and wires. It cost quite a bit.
And now we're on to you got a bit ripped off. You got taken for a bit of a ride here. Now we're into that.
So Bo has a very healthy budget for his audio system. Even after the rewiring, he still has around $25,000 earmarked for further audio upgrades. He bought into his dealer's advice, but he's got to say he isn't noticing the difference.
Yeah.
And that has him disappointed. He called his dealer to come back, but was told that the new cables all need to warm up and cool down multiple times, and that you should listen to it for at least 3 hours a day for several weeks. And if you're not willing to put in the work, then you don't deserve the upgrade.
Past the return period or something along those lines.
Yeah. So burn-in is one of the things that'll make me tick. Yeah, just be like, anytime somebody says something's got to burn in or break in or whatever.
Copper
cables.
wires. Copper wires need to burn in. Come on. But again, we're not saying that at you, Bo. We're saying it because we've seen that marketing for decades
not only that,
at this point.
Yeah, there's psychologically. Mm-hmm. If you listen to something long enough, expecting to hear a difference, you will hear a difference, whether or not
your brain
it
breaks
exists.
In, not the wires. The wires aren't breaking in; your brain breaks in.
And especially I think compared to your income or compared to your disposable income in this case, how much you spend on something, the more that you spent in comparison to your actual disposable income, the more likely you are to try to convince yourself that expenditure was worth it. Because to say that it wasn't worth it, you're saying that I wasted money and I was tricked, or I was wrong, or I was a fool, and all of those things are hard to admit to ourselves.
Absolutely,
and it's part of this whole cognitive dissonance thing that they want to ingrain in you when they sell you these things, and they tell you, you're just not listening hard enough.
Very clearly, it started to turn in his mind before he ever started hearing us,
which is good.
Yeah.
So he started to feel rather skeptical. So now he's found us, and he'd like to know what we say will make an actual noticeable difference in upgrading his system. Could it be new cables and wires? If so, which one? Could it be new amplifiers? Maybe switch from Macintosh to Mark Levinson?
No.
Also no. As he says, he already loves his B&W speaker, so we'll actually give him a good upgrade, given that he's perfectly willing to spend the money for it.
Oh, we have some suggestions.
We've got some upgrades, yes.
And it'll make a genuine difference. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So understand that I am very hesitant to blame any individual person. And there's a saying, I don't know that I'm saying it right. Never
attribute to malevolence what can be explained by
incompetence or ignorance or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of times the people who are selling you stuff, they are going by A, what they've been taught, and B, what customers have actually given them as
customer feedback. Yep.
So that they do the change, the customer says, wow, this made such a huge difference. Right? And they're like, okay, I am going to sell you things that I have had I've had positive experience with in the past.
Positive feedback loop. Yep.
So let's not look at your dealer and say that this person is like sitting there rubbing their hands together like Mr. Burns, like, aha, got another one. That's not how you do good business. Okay. Or she.
Although it's not out of the question that they saw you coming with whatever car you drove up in and said, oh, we could take this guy for a ride. That's not out of the question. There are those dealers out there. They exist too.
Which is funny because at the bike shop that I sometimes work at, if I see you roll up in a Mercedes, it is guaranteed that you're going to pull the world's most I just got it from a dumpster bike out of the back of your car as possible. Like this bike will literally barely be held together by rust and baling wire.
But so I want to say right away, get your money back from that AudioQuest expenditure, because that is money that we can put into that. You still got $25,000 left. You recoup, get that money back, double it, and there is more that you can.
Might be up to $50,000 after you return the cables. So yes, get the money back.
Pretty looking cables that perform really well and do not cost an arm and a leg. SVS's SoundPath cables, I think, look really nice. Yeah. Honestly, you can spend less than the SVS SoundPath cables and still get the same performance, the same excellent, perfect, as far as what a wire can do performance, but they won't look as nice. I think those SVS ones are very reasonable for something that is prettier than normal, but doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
Let's go through the things that he asks first. Cables and wires. Can you upgrade your system with cables and wires? And the answer is no, you cannot.
You can only downgrade a system.
That's right. Yeah. The reality of cables and wires is they are meant to pass through the signal unaltered. As long as they do that, no matter how much they cost or what they look like, as long as they can do that, if they can pass it through unaltered, or if any alterations to the signal or affect the performance in a way that is not perceivable by you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can take a cable and measure I'm talking about speaker cables here, and measure it and say it attenuates the signal here and here to a certain extent. And whatever those values are, oftentimes, no matter how much how big that number looks on paper, oftentimes are either in a range that is inaudible to the human ear, or that the changes are so slight as to be unnoticeable to you, or your room correction or whatever program you have that level matches and does some EQing to your system will be able to account for it very easily.
Yeah. And of course, the reverse marketing is always that it is possible for a cable to degrade a signal. That is a possible thing. That is the only thing that a cable could actually do to your signal to make an audible change is degrade it in some way, is make it worse. It can't make a signal better than what came out of the source device. There's no way of improving the signal on its journey from one device to another.
And you wouldn't want it to.
No. But the marketing will always say, hey, look, everything that costs less than our cable, it's degrading your signal. You have to pay this much for these AudioQuest cables to get a cable that isn't degrading the signal. That is just factually, objectively false. You can pay very little money to get a speaker wire that does the job as well as any speaker wire can possibly do the job of not degrading the signal. And you can do that for very little money. So, you can just get some bulk Belkin speaker wire that they use for broadcasts, and that will do the job for 50 cents a foot, and so that's just false in that statement that everything that costs less is degrading the signal. That's just not true.
Right. And it's very important to understand that any cable that is affecting your sound in any way is always a detriment, a detriment. It has to pass it through because it cannot make it sound better. If it did, it would only make it sound better for some things and not for other things. It would make it sound worse. Okay. A lot of times with high-end systems, you end up like I say high-end system. Let's call them audiophile systems, not a high-end system. With audiophile systems, you have speakers that are so non-linear and have such weird like impedance curves and stuff like that they sound not good when you just hook them up to standard gear. Simply because they're just not very good. They're just
like the speaker itself is non-linear in response to the signal. So you're trying to counteract that in some way. Sure.
You add some sort of other non-linear cable to it, and you plug. It's a high end.
And you hope that the built-in
they balance each other out, right?
Counteract each other. Sure.
So you do all this stuff, and you end up with a sound that sounds better to you, but not for everything. Like, oh, now my system sounds really good for classical music or I don't know, death metal, something, but it sounds terrible for bluegrass. You're like, okay, but that's not the way it should be. Your system should sound however it's supposed to sound based on what the source material is. If it doesn't sound like that, then it's EQing your system and your sound in some way. You don't want that. So cable wires is not an upgrade.
No,
okay?
Get your money back.
Only be a downgrade.
Either get back what you had before, or spend way, way less on something like SVS, or heck, you can go to Monoprice, you can go to Blue Jeans Cable, and get all of your cabling there if you need some.
Right. So could it be new amplifiers? Maybe switch from Macintosh to Macintosh. Amplifiers again are the same thing. They should only be providing linear power to your
signal,
speaker.
Make it louder. That's all they're supposed to do.
That's right. And bi-amping, which is what you've done, it sounds like, what it basically does, and this is the idea, is like, okay, well, I'm going to bi-amp. I'm going to take the one amplifier is going to do some of the sounds, and the other amplifier is going to do the other sounds, and this is going to give me, more separation or something. I don't know, and more power available, and blah blah blah. The reality is that sonically, it's going to make very, very little difference, if anything at all. And that's the only time it can really make a difference is if your speaker is clipping, your amplifier is clipping in some way.
Yeah. The amplifier is clipping before the speaker, or in a fully active speaker where it's literally the crossover takes place first, and then it feeds completely individual signals to two separate amplifiers that then feed two different drivers in a fully active system. But that's not what you have. You've got the same signal going into both Macintosh amplifiers that are feeding your left speaker, and the same signal going into both Macintosh amplifiers that is feeding your right speaker. It's amplifying the full signal all the time, and when you connect it to those two separate binding posts on the back of your B&W speaker, all that's happening is more than half of that signal is getting turned into heat. That's where all the power's going. It's just getting turned into heat by the crossover. So yeah, it's not really doing you a ton of benefit. That said, you've got excellent amplification. There's no need to replace it. You could achieve a change in sound if you went and got an amplifier that isn't doing its job as well as the Macintosh, and it isn't just making the signal louder, it's also altering the response in some way. But we don't want that, so there's no need for you to change.
So, and when you split your performance, usually it's the tweeter and then everything else.
It very often is, yes.
So the tweeter gets its own amplifier, which the tweeter takes
very unnecessary.
Almost no power.
20 watts at a maximum.
I mean, it's the smallest amount of power you can possibly imagine that you might go into your speakers. And then the other amplifier is doing everything else, which is basically all of the power that it's doing. So you've not really you've not really helped out the situation as much as they'll tell you that they are. And again, this is the general line of thinking. This is what I've seen speakers that can be tri-amped. There are 3 binding posts on there. Yep. Mid-range, woofer, and tweeter. And again, all unnecessary. Almost all cases is unnecessary. So now you have 2 extra amplifiers lying around that you do not need anymore. I would implore you to put back in the jumpers that were there in the back of your speaker, plug in a single amplifier, and unplug the other one. because you can just basically unplug the other one
and just have a listen
and marvel at the lack of change. Okay, it'll be astonishing. Now there's even more speaker cables that you don't need. Let's go with that.
That is also true. Yeah. So in terms of what is going to make a difference, there's two major things. Let's start with the biggest of all, which is your room. We don't know. Yes. Maybe your room is fully acoustically treated. It's not out of the question. You've worked with a dealer. Maybe they did that. But we know there are a lot of high-end audiophile dealers who do not treat the room at all. There's a couple of levels of thinking where that isn't completely like wrong-headed, because a lot of times 2-channel setups, it is dedicated to music, and a lot of music is studio recordings where they've isolated every single instrument and recorded them separately. The vocalist was put in a padded booth, and on that recording there is essentially no room tone. There's no sense of the room in which it was recorded, because it was all recorded separately and individually and in padded spaces. And the notion behind a recording like that is when it's played through your speakers, it's as if the artists, the musicians were teleported into your room, right? So if I brought a physical piano or a physical guitar or a physical singer and they stood in your room and they played for you, then it makes sense that, like, well, why do I need to change the acoustics of my room? It's like I brought that musician into my room, and however it sounds in here is however it sounds. And now I'm trying to recreate that via speakers in my room that are playing back these isolated recorded sounds. And it's as if I brought the person into my room. Why do I need to care about changing the acoustics of my room? There's some argument to that. There's going to be masking effects if you have a really reflective and echoing room, those types of things that you probably want to knock down anyway, because you bring a really good singer or a really good musician into an echoey room and you're like, I wish it weren't so echoey in here, and that's going to be the same whether it's speakers or a real live person. But there's the flip side, which is there's a whole lot of music, and especially movies, where there is room sound. It was a live concert that was recorded, and you want to get the sense that I didn't bring the musicians into my room, whatever those acoustics might be. I want to get the sense that I have been teleported to wherever this was recorded. And of course, for movies, we want that sense, right? We don't want to bring the sounds of the spaceship into my little theater. We want to take me and put me into the spaceship, right? And it's the same thing if it's a live concert. I want to feel like I'm at that live concert. I don't want to feel like I somehow shrunk down the live concert auditorium and stuffed it into my little room. That's where we need to address the acoustics of the room that you're in so that they aren't imparting too much of their own sonic signature onto what you're hearing. So that's where we get into acoustic treatment. I'm going to say that even though they're definitely not the most expensive, they've actually done quite a few recent upgrades to the fit and finish and aesthetics of their products, and that's GIC Acoustics. They offer free acoustical advice. So there's really no better place to start your journey. Maybe you don't end up buying from them. Maybe you go with more expensive, maybe they're prettier, maybe the fit and finish is even better, something like that from a different brand. But in terms of starting your acoustical journey, in terms of room acoustics and treating your room acoustically, no better place to start than GIC Acoustics. You can absolutely take advantage of their free advice. They can spend more time with you than we have here, and they can go through all of their products and really get your room sorted out so that you aren't importing too much sonic signature from the room itself. So that's number one. And then the second one is going to be subwoofers. Yeah. I know you bought these 800 D3 speakers from B&W. They are pretty darn close to full range. The speakers themselves can produce sounds, definitely down to like the 25, 30 hertz range. 20 hertz, maybe not, but then there isn't very much music that's going down to 20 hertz. But again, you have a room. And you have set up your speakers, or your dealer has set up the speakers for you, so that where the speakers are positioned, those wonderful 800 D3 towers, where they're positioned, they're in those locations to get you the best imaging, the best stereo imaging, so that voices sound like they're coming from dead center, so that instruments sound like they're on a virtual sound stage in front of you, and the locations of those instruments is analogous to where they're supposed to be positioned, whether it was a live recording or someone envisioned how it was supposed to be in a studio recording. That was all set up for imaging. The downside is that bass doesn't work that way. The wavelengths of bass frequencies are so long that there's really no chance that you ever heard a bass sound that made a straight line from the speaker to your ear. It wouldn't have made that sound yet. The bass sound wave is 40 feet long, 30 feet long, something like that. Chances are you're sitting closer to your speaker than that distance. So it means the sound wave went past you, past your head, bounced off the wall behind you, the wall above you, the floor below you, the sidewalls. It bounced off of all of those things before it ever actually fully formed and reached your ears. That's why we say there's a transition frequency in your room where it's the combination of the bass producing thing and the room working together. That's all you ever hear. You never hear a straight line. from the speaker to your ear when it comes to the bass. So this is where we want you to have 2 or 4 subwoofers that are optimally positioned in the room, which basically just means across the room from each other, the midpoints of your 2 side walls, the middle of your front wall, the middle of your back wall, or diagonally opposite across the room, the front left corner and the rear right corner, something along those lines, or all 4 corners, or the midpoints of all 4 walls. It works excellently as well. That addresses the subwoofers are producing the bass. They are working together with the room rather than fighting against it. And now your speakers can focus on the mid-range and the treble where all that imaging is. So you don't have to spend your full $25,000 budget. But since you have that budget, you can really nicely acoustically treat your room, follow Gik's advice when you're doing that, and you can get at least a pair of really nice subwoofers. You don't have to spend $25,000. You can certainly go to SVS or Rhythmic or any of those other brands that we mention all the time. But those could be 2 really nice options because they have nice finish options as well, and really sort things out there. So yeah, that's where I go. I don't want to spend too much time.
I don't think any of these Macintosh 2-channel preamps have sub-outs. They have what's called a fixed output, which I imagine is about as good as that's going to get. And you're going to have to use the crossover in your subwoofer in order to...
And the SVS can help you there too, including with the setup, because their customer service is top-notch, and they are very experienced setting up dedicated 2-channel systems and having it blend very nicely with their subwoofers. So that could be a really top choice there.
He says he's got. So again, I agree with the whole subwoofer thing. You're gonna have to be a little careful with the 2-channel preamp that you've got there. You can make. I could help you start. We could help you start from scratch. We could say sell everything you got or send it back to the person if it's still returnable, and get your money back. And then we could start from scratch and get you something that costs far less, won't be as pretty, but will sound just as good, if not better.
But if you do go with SVS, if you go with their 4000 series or their 16 Ultra series, and definitely with the budget that you have, you can afford those. And it's not out of the question that even if your room isn't gigantic, like the sealed subs from those series would not be out of place in smaller rooms or something. Those can implement a full crossover. They can, and since we know you have external amplification, they can have the full crossover where the bass is filtered out of the signal that goes out to the speakers, the amplifiers for the speakers, and the high frequencies are filtered out of the subwoofer, of course. So you can have a full crossover built into SVS's subs. So that can be a great way to come at this.
Just remember, we linked up above to the article that helps you pick your subwoofer size based on your room. It's, is my subwoofer big enough? It's on AV Gadgets. So he's got golfing buddies with similar money to spend. They all swear that listening to music on a turntable is the only way to go. He doesn't even have one. Guess who's not going to really help you get one? And if he's being honest, the whole process of having to physically get up and down, carefully handle each record, and only to be able to play one record at a time just does not appeal to him. He really enjoys how easy it is to play any music he wants it to any room of his house using his Control 4 system and his iPad. But if the audio quality really is so much better, then he wouldn't want to deprive himself, so should he get a turntable?
No.
I can't say no fast enough.
You don't have to have a turntable.
I think listen, honestly, you think you're underwhelmed by your cable upgrade? Wait till you upgrade to your turntable, and then they tell you have to buy a $20,000. I mean, they have $100,000 turntables out there
easily. Now. Much more than that is entirely
you can
possible.
Spend some money, and guess what they sound like? Just as crappy as the record you put on top of them, because that's exactly that's it. No matter how good the turntable is, it's not going to sound that much better.
One of those things where yes, very often you put a turntable in your system for the first time, and you hear a difference.
Because it is different.
Yeah, it's not when you did your cable thing, you're like, I didn't hear any difference. Why did I spend all that money? You put the turntable in your system and you hear a difference, and it is real, it's measurable and everything. It's completely objectively confirmed that there is a difference. Some people are going to be like, I really like that difference, so I love playing things on my turntable. Some people are going to be like, there's a bunch of noise that wasn't there in my digital files, and I don't like that difference at all. So, I don't blame people who like, turntables and really enjoy them. There are some albums out there that either just don't exist digitally, or the vinyl version was actually the best version that was ever released for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to say there's never a reason to go for it, but for exactly what you said, you're like, I don't really love the idea of the experience of it. Do I have to do it just to keep up with the Joneses? Just to be part of the peer pressure? Absolutely not. Let us be the other side of that. If you're like, I don't love the idea of just the process of playing records, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't have to.
You know what you do? You get yourself a Audio-Technica turntable.
Sure.
You know, it costs a couple $100. I mean, you can spend
like $400. The LP 120 is really nice. It's like $400.
Get that, and you could send the signal out digitally.
You can.
Then,
it's got a USB
and then you can
output.
send it to any room in your house with your Control 4 system.
That's true, yeah.
And, and all your friends will be like, that you're corrupting the signal. That's why it sounds so bad. No, it sounds so bad because the records suck. Yes, I do not think that's, I mean, I love wine. Okay, I don't drink it anymore.
Tom, we got to get going.
I know.
We got to get
love
more
wine,
than 5
but
questions.
I can tell you right now, you can spend a buttload on wine, and at the end of it, it's just. I mean, it tastes like wine. It tastes like wine. It tastes good. It's fine, but it doesn't taste that much better. It doesn't taste hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of dollars better than another bottle I could have got for like $30-$40. Same thing with audio. A lot of times in audio and turntables in particular, it is about the experience of doing it and the nostalgia of doing it. It has nothing to do with the sound. The sound is a red herring. It is not better. It is objectively worse most of the time, and it will be it's just this whole cachet of doing the process. It has nothing to do with the sound. Alvin, we haven't heard from Alvin in a while, and he says that's because he's assembled his 7.2.4 system using clips to reference 2 towers and center up front, along with the Onkyo RZ730 receiver and Carver AV505 5-channel amp, and he's just been enjoying it. He hasn't felt the need to tinker with the setup as much as he used to. That's what happens when you get a good setup.
That's right.
But an idea popped into his head, and while he will probably just try it out regardless, he'd like to hear our take and our explanation as to why he should or shouldn't notice a difference. The 5-channel Carver amp is 80 watts times 5, and he's only using 3 of the 5 channels right now to power his front 3 clip speakers. He's no trouble at all reaching full reference volume. It doesn't look like he's sitting farther than 10 inches away from this thing, so whatever. That 5... It's no trouble reaching full reference volume if he wants to, and he typically listens quieter than that, mostly around -10. But since those 2 extra amplifier channels are just sitting there, he's curious what would happen if he used them to bi-amp his front towers. We just talked about this.
We did.
He's already got an extra speaker wire on hand, and he just need a couple of RCA-Y splitters, so this isn't expensive at all. And like he says, he'll probably just go ahead and do it just to satisfy his curiosity. But as a thought experiment, it doesn't even take that much thought. What do we say about it? What's our take on using what he has on hand to bi-amp his front towers like this? I mean, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't do it. If you've got the wires on hand, you're not spending any money, and you're not using the amplifier channels, knock yourself out. The reality is if you hear a difference, it's between your ears and not coming from the speakers.
In this setup, there is
clip speakers. Give me
really no chance that tweeter is demanding more
than a watt.
More power than it is able to share from the single amplifier channel. There's no world in
it's
this
just out there going, thank God
happening.
I've got my own amplifier now.
Yeah.
I'm really gonna have a lot of headroom with my 5 watts that I need to hit reference volume.
So if your time is at all more valuable than your curiosity in this situation, don't waste the time. I'm gonna say this is completely unnecessary in this situation. Yes. But if you got the time to spare, absolutely go ahead. Have fun with it. Why not?
Yes. Christian is currently in the planning stages for the construction of his new home theater. It's a big room, 7,000 cubic feet, with a big unspecified budget. I mean, big is relative, but whatever. He says not to worry about the price tag, although he does not like to spend money wastefully. Nobody likes this. Who out there is like, I've got so much money, I literally go outside and burn it when I'm cold.
People buy
no one does that. I mean, it's weird to even say that people like to waste their money. No one likes to waste their money. The rich do not waste their money.
No.
The plan is for 3 rows of seats, tiered, so that all 3 rows have a clear line of sight. The front row is 13 feet from eyes to screen, and he says he's going for a screen width of 140 inches.
Note from me,
width.
The width, so that'd be 160 inches diagonal if it's 16:9. Something in me is like, I think he's probably going for a 2.35 to 1 screen, which I would recommend you do not do. I just talked about how there's more and more modern movies being shot in like more and more square-ish aspect ratios, 1.33, 1.43, 1.37, 1.66, all those types of things. It's like, if you got that 2.35 to 1 CinemaScope screen, which would be 152 inches diagonal, being 140 inches wide. It's like, yeah, you're going to have some big blank spaces on the left and right with a lot of modern movies. So I would implore you to go 16:9, but I have no problem with keeping the width consistent at 140 inches. If that's what you like, that'd be 160 inches diagonal, 16:9.
Yeah. He tends to listen to some PerListen speakers. He has a few questions about them before he gets to that audition. He's read about how the MTM Diapolito arrays design works and how they are compromised if you turn them horizontal, as so many center speakers do because of the lobing and comb filtering effects to that result. I wrote an article called MTM Speakers Why All the, or MTM Sensors Why All the Hate, something along those lines, to kind of address this because Reddit hates them. All the PerListen speakers use their DPC, Directivity Pattern Control Array, that places a pair of small mid-range drivers above and below the waveguide loaded tweeter. And those two small mid-range drivers are always above and below the tweeter, even in their center speaker models where the bass woofers are on either side of that DPC stack, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that a successful design? Does it involve the typical lobing and comb filtering issues of a horizontal MTM center speaker? Is it effective enough that you can actually use 3 horizontal PerListen speakers across the front and not be able to hear the difference versus 3 vertical PerListen speakers? Okay, let's do this quickly because, first of all, it is dumb to just take one design of speaker and say this one is bad. Because if it were bad, no one would do it and you wouldn't have to say it. There are lots of bad speaker designs out there. Yeah. Look at the designs from like the 80s where they had like 3 tweeters in like random places on the front of a big box that looked like a shoe box, and then a woofer and a mid-range over in the corner. Those speaker designs do not exist anymore, and you know why? Because they're bad. They don't work well, but they didn't know it at the time. They were just like, I don't know where to put these things. I'm gonna put it where it looks cool. Maybe they'll sound good. Who knows? We design speakers in the ways that we design them because they can be made to sound good. Can there be lobing effects? Can there be some cancellation? Yes. Can there be problems with one design versus another design? Yes. Can those problems be overcome by driver choice and crossover frequencies? Yes. You can deal with a lot of these things. So do you just say, I don't want to do an MTM speaker because Reddit told me not to? Reddit can suck it. There is no reason not to look at it. I have had center speakers with MTM designs that sounded great. Sure. I have had some that sounded terrible.
Yes.
And the reason was not because of where the drivers were situated in the front of the stupid speaker. It was because of the design of the speaker.
That all said, what PerListen is doing, they've got the measurements to back it up as well. Their design works. They've got very consistent horizontal off-axis dispersion, whether it's one of their center speakers or whether it's one of their towers or one of their monitors. They got very, very consistent off-axis response to the left and right. It is controlled vertically, right? If you stand way up on your tippy toes or go right down on the floor, the frequency response is different, and that is by design. They are intending to limit some of the ceiling bounce and some of the floor bounce. That is an intentional design choice. But yeah, it is a successful design. You could use 3 horizontal speakers across the front and it would totally work, and it would be nigh impossible in an actual blind comparison to be able to tell them apart from the vertical versions.
Okay. The other thing to remember here is this idea that you can get 3 identical speakers up front and they will sound identical as the sound pans across is a pipe dream and a fairy tale told on the internet. It does not happen. Those speakers are in different places in your room. There is different things that are going on with the sound between you and it. Those speakers will not sound identical. They will sound slightly different just because, even if they're identical speakers, even if you could clone it, and know that every single aspect of that speaker was anechoically identical. If it performed exactly the same, if all 3, they would still sound different. So let's get away from that idea too. So he tends to have 4 subwoofers, so he's not concerned about any of the speakers being able to play low bass at reference volume, but they do need to reach down at full reference volume to the crossover frequency. And he's a bit concerned about the output capabilities of his front 3 speakers, rightfully so, given his large room and quite large seating distances, especially to the back row. He is willing to spend the money to get PerListen's larger Tower S-series speakers up front and their largest S7C center, but if the 3 S5 speakers could actually handle the output requirements, he'd actually prefer to go with the stand-mounted design. Plus, it would save money, which is not supposed to. What, you don't like to waste money? What? I thought we all liked to waste money. Rob wastes it all the time. Look at all the TVs he's got.
It's true.
So what does he actually need in terms of output capabilities, and which PerListen models would be up to the task? I don't know, Rob. Hit him up with the deets.
Yeah, so look, if you got any of the S7 models, they can handle your seating distance and your room size with ease. Right. You'd need some good amplification, some decent wattage, because they can handle a whole bunch of wattage, but to reach their full maximum output capabilities. But yeah, if you went with 3 S7 models, whether that's S7Cs or S7 Towers up front, yeah, you would absolutely be able to do this with ease. The S5M, that's the monitor version, $6,500 each. They would be able, if you maxed out their amplification capabilities, which is about 300 watts, they would be able to reach 105 decibel peaks in your second row, assuming your second row is somewhere, 6 to 8 feet behind the first row. So you need that beefy amp, but they could technically just do it. They wouldn't hit 105 dB peaks in your back row necessarily. The back row might be, 3-4 decibels quieter, but I think you probably want to focus on being able to hit that middle row at full reference volume peaks and just assume that the very back row is going to be a little bit quieter. Because, that happens in a full-size movie theater, too. If you're sitting right in the front versus right at the back, you're not hearing the exact same volume levels from the front speakers. So we wouldn't want to be, hitting 105 dB peaks in the very, very back row and then having that front row, if those are actually your primary seats, getting blasted much too loudly. So I think it makes sense to focus on the second row. So I'm going to say the S5M can, just do it. It would be okay to go with those. If you really do want to hit 105 dB peaks in the very back row of seats, then you'd want to go with the S7. So it's kind of right on that borderline there. That all said, you could go to the R series, step down to PerListen's less expensive series. You would there want to go with the R7T, the R7 Tower, which are $5,000 each. They're less expensive than the S5M monitors. Okay. To get the R7 Towers, they have the exact same output capabilities as those S5 monitors do the R7 Towers. The R5 models, they would struggle a bit. They could probably get that very front row, but they wouldn't get either of the 2 rows behind you up to full reference volume. So I'm going to say probably look at an R7 Tower or an S5 monitor. That would be the quote unquote value choice in this situation, because they can do just exactly what you need as long as you match the amplification to them properly. If you want to just be like, I've got headroom to spare, then go ahead and get the S7 model.
So as he said, the budget isn't really a concern, but he's also finding it hard to justify the price tag for PerListen's S-series speakers in every position. He doesn't want to shortchange his listening experience in any way. But honestly, for surrounds and backs and overheads, is it really going to matter if he spends less there? The answer is no, absolutely not.
You can spend less.
He was thinking he'd probably spend the money to get the 3 PerListen speakers up front, but then spend considerably less on the surrounds and overheads by getting Sonos speakers for those positions, or some other brand if there's something that would be a lot better. Or what do we think overall? Sure, that's fine. Get those.
Yeah, certainly for the overheads, I would have zero problem with you doing that.
Yeah, surrounds. Remember, you might want to have 3 pairs of surround speakers.
That's right.
One for each.
And what I would suggest to you is really look at the R series from PerListen, because honestly, for the people who have done comparisons that I trust, they're like, actually blind hearing the difference between the R series and the S series, other than at the very maximum output capabilities, which are objectively different. Like the sonic signature is really consistent between the S series and the R series. And I'm like, you're not saving maximum money, but it's like, for those surround channels, I think it would make, like, if you get the R7T towers up front, which has saved you $4,500 there across the front, and then go with R series surrounds, and then definitely spend less on the in-ceiling overheads. I think that's probably, like, given the factors that you've noted about price and concerns and everything, I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Carlton. Carlton is planning to finish a room in his basement to turn it into a dedicated soundproof home theater. Mm-hmm. One wall is currently an exterior exposed concrete wall. The other is also exposed concrete, but there's a neighbor on the other side, and there are two interior walls that he says are both already double stud constructed. He intends to get a sealed ISO door HD for the single entry into the room. He has formulated a plan for soundproofing the rest of the room, but I wanted to double check and get our opinion. Plus ask about some specific products. So he asks, first of all, if you haven't gone to soundproofingcompany.com and asked these questions there, then
that's the number one recommendation. Soundproofingcompany.com. Contact them. It's free.
We should copy pasta this whole thing and just send it to them and let them answer it. But okay. Is Sonopan worth it? It appears to be a bit more expensive than drywall in the States, but he lives close enough to the border that he could easily drive across the greater Toronto area to pick up some at Canadian Home Depot, where it's more cost effective. Mm-hmm. That sounds like some importing nonsense. That
they're a Canadian company. That's why we get a little price break there. Kind of like Paradigm.
That's racism is what that is. He's seen some good STC numbers posted about its claimed soundproofing results, but he's never been able to find any head-to-head comparison versus already good double stud, double drywall construction. So what do we say? I would probably go with the drywall, because I think the construction is what does most of the work and not what drywall you put up.
Well, Sonopan is just soundboard. Soundproofing company, the company we trust more than anyone else when it comes to soundproofing construction. They have a whole article about soundboard. They don't specifically name Sonopan, but Sonopan is just soundboard with some good marketing behind it. That's really all it is. It's chopped up cardboard glued together, and in Sonopan's case, colored green. But that's all it is. It's kind of spongy. What you're supposed to do is attach another layer of drywall, but only screw it into the chopped up cardboard held together by glue and not actually go into any of the studs. That's the way it's supposed to provide some decoupling and damping. I don't like it. I don't like doing that. No. Soundproofing company doesn't like doing that. It doesn't make sense to actually spend more money on it than just getting a second layer of drywall. I'm not a favor of using soundboard.
So, I mean, I guess we're going to go into this whole thing anyways, but the idea for soundproofing, the way to do it is to build a room within a room. So you have a room that is decoupled from the rest of the house completely.
That's right.
Okay, and if you're not doing that, then everything else is not going to work, basically. I mean, you can get very close to soundproofing, but if you're talking about truly soundproof, where there is zero noise outside the room, and you don't have to worry about bothering your neighbors at all, if you're not physically decoupling the entire room from the rest of the house, then you're never going to achieve soundproofing. You still have to do more things, but that's the big thing. And it costs a lot of money. I mean, a ton. But whatever. So he has, of course, seen the suggestions to use 2 layers of drywall with green glue in between. Most say they use 2 layers of 5/8 type X drywall, whatever it is. And he was looking at some commercial grade 3/4 inch drywall, but it does appear to be quite a bit more expensive. It probably wouldn't be worth paying almost 4 times the price, would it? I mean, again, if you're not decoupling the entire room from the rest of the house, then this is...
Yeah, no, going to the 3/4 inch is definitely not worth it over the much more readily available and less expensive 5/8 of an inch. And if for some reason you were just hooked on having exactly, that depth of 2 layers of 3/4 inch, you could just add some 1/2 inch drywall onto 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall, and you've achieved exactly the same depth. And it'll be
so his plan is to use sound clips and hat channels in the ceiling and on 3 out of the 4 walls. There's your problem right there.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, that's immediately doesn't work. It's like I plan on making a submarine with a top, a bottom, and 1 wall, right. 1 side. But the other side I'm going to leave open because I want to be able to see the water, the fish as they go by. Whenever we talked about soundproofing, think of it as I want to build an aquarium in my house for sound.
Yeah.
Okay. I want an aquarium for sound. I want to be able to put it in there and then it can't get out. Top, bottom, sides.
I want to be inside of a thermos.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've now said that you don't want an aquarium. You want the water to spill out everywhere. So the 2 double stud interior walls would get sound clips and hat channels and 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall with green glue in between, assuming no sonopan, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he would construct a single stud frame next to the concrete wall that has the neighbor on the side. Well, they get all the sound. That's nice of them. And then put sound clips and hat channels and 2 layers of drywall on with green glue on that. The concrete exterior wall he was just going to leave alone.
Nope.
No, you can't do that. You can't do it. And he was going to install an acoustically transparent false wall on that side. Then you're going to put the speakers right against it, with enough room to install in-wall speakers and installation of framing. Is he missing anything with this plan? Yeah, a wall.
You're missing a whole wall.
and the floor. And the ceiling, but you're definitely missing a wall. We haven't talked about the rest of it.
The good news, though, is that I can actually save you a little bit of money and square footage, which might allow you to fully construct the proper walls. You only need to decouple once. Basically, think of the drywall on the noise-producing side as the skin of a drum, and you do not want that drum skin to have any way of transmitting its vibrations to the other side of the wall. That's what we want to do. But you don't need to do it twice or 3 times. You just need to separate it once. So you've got these 2 interior walls that you've said are already double studs. You don't need sound clips and hat channels on those. Right. They're already separated. The drywall on one side of the double studs has no connection to the drywall on the other side of the double studs. You don't need sound clips and hat channels there, so we've saved you some cost, we've saved you some labor, and we've saved you a little bit of square footage with that by removing that. Still do the 2 layers of drywall with the green glue in between, but you can just do that directly onto the double studs. You don't have to use sound clips and hat channels there. For the wall that is got a neighbor on the other side, there's already a concrete wall there. You've already said you're going to put regular 2x4 framing in front of that concrete wall on your side. You don't need sound clips and hat channels on that. It is separated from the concrete wall that your neighbor is on the other side. You've already decoupled by putting up the 2x4 framing in front of that concrete wall. You want to do that on the exterior wall too, but you don't need sound clips and hat channels on any of your walls. You do need sound clips and hat channels on your ceiling.
Yes.
Because that you need to have separated from the ceiling joists, and the most normal way to do that is sound clips and hat channels, or there are the hush frames. We already know he looked at the ISO doors, so we know he's familiar with ISO Store. They have their hush frames, which are a similar method to sound clips and hat channels, but in some cases are more cost effective and can actually save you a little bit more inches on the height of your ceiling because they install in a slightly different way than sound clips and hat channels. So the hush frame could be something that you look at, but it's the same idea. You're going to have framing or furring strips or hat channels that are physically separated from the joists by the sound clips or by the hush frames. So that's what you do there to create your pseudo room within a room. You haven't mentioned anything about what's going on with the floor. This is a basement. So you want to have some sort of system that allows moisture and any water that could get into the, I'm assuming, poured concrete, because the rest of the walls are all poured concrete floor. So that's usually a dimpled plastic layer, or they now have these fantastic OSB subfloor tiles with a whole styrofoam with channel grooves cut into the styrofoam underneath it, and they are not expensive and they snap together like Legos, and you can put a subfloor onto your concrete basement floor that gives you all the air movement and moisture channeling that you could possibly need really inexpensively and really fast and easy to put together. So there's a whole YouTube video about how to finish a basement that I'm going to link to. That's the best full explanation that I've found. It goes over exactly what you need to do insulation wise, vapor barrier wise, all of those things. And you're just gonna, your framing is already set. So you don't have to do anything particularly complicated in here, but those are the things that you missed.
Chris asks, what's our take on the anti-mode 8033 automated subwoofer EQ systems by DSpeaker? DSpeaker?
Yeah, it's like DSP speaker, but all merged together. So it's DSpeaker.
The speaker.
Yes.
Anyways.
Anti-mode.
He's using a Yamaha RX A3070 and a pair of SVS subwoofers. He's used Rob's 12-step guide to set up his dual subwoofers, and he's run YPOW with RSC. For his 5.2.4 speaker setup, he doesn't have any complaints about the sound, but who knows if it could be any better? You do. You're in the room. You know if it could be any better. You
sit from seat to seat, you play some bass sweeps. If those bass sweeps sound nice and linear and consistent from seat to seat, there's nothing better. Yeah. You can't get better than that.
There don't seem to be many reviews of the anti-mode 8033 products or properly detailed explanations of what they actually do to the signal and how, but the user reviews all seem very positive. Sure. Subjective reviews. Can we explain how this 2-button pushes plus 15 minutes and you're done automated system works and would be worth the price, which is about $450 to get it? He's always thought it would be cool to take full measurements and look at graphs and dig into some custom subwoofer EQing, but honestly just feels daunting. Mm-hmm. And it sure does look like it would take a lot of time, especially when you're learning how to use the software and a new microphone for the first time.
Yes.
You're not wrong. So if there's an automated system that can do it for you and give you the same results, you'd be all for it. Does the NC mode fit the bill? Actually, you've already done it. You set up your subwoofers properly, which is the biggest step. Okay. And then you ran room correction, and now you are done. I mean, honestly, anything that this thing can do, it should already be done, I think. Now, I haven't clicked on the stupid link.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, I want to give some credit here to DS Speaker and the Anti-Mode 8033. There's 2 different versions. One is basically a mono version and one is a stereo version. But I read through the manual for this thing, and I want to give some credit here because unlike a lot of these types of products that we've come across in the past, there isn't a bunch of BS in the manual. Like their approach to explaining how bass works inside of rooms in houses, what you're attempting to do with auto correction in this case, like it's correct. Like I don't have any qualms with the things that they're explaining. Yeah, so I mean, that's the credit I want to give here. They're not trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes or tell you a bunch of misinformation. This would be potentially quite useful in setups where you just have one subwoofer. There definitely could be uses for this if you don't have other methods of EQ. It could be useful in some situations with 2 subwoofers for sure. But there's a couple of clues in here, like what is it actually doing to the signal? Well, they talk about, okay, it doesn't just alter frequency, it also alters in the time domain. That's the key that tells you, okay, they bought a chip with fur filters in it. It doesn't have parametric filters, it has fur filters, because whenever they mention time, that's what they're talking about, is that we've got fur filters in there, even though they don't say that explicitly. And it's 32 fur filters. That's what it is. It's not magic. That's what it is 32 fur filters. The process that it goes to, because they're like, yeah, it's an automated process where it might play anywhere between 2 and 7 or 8 sweeps by the time that it does the full thing. So it's an iterative process where it's basically playing the sweep as it is to begin with. The second sweep is almost always where it just adjusted level, just to get everything within clipping range of the microphone that's bundled with it. And then the third, fourth, and so on sweeps are basically just trial and error of it makes some changes there to try and match its target curve, which is just a flat line. It's not trying to do anything. You can optionally choose to put in a boost at 35 hertz or 25 hertz or 20 hertz. You can optionally choose to do that yourself, but it's basically just going back and forth and playing as many sweeps as it needs to until it reaches whatever tolerance they've programmed into it. But it effectively only measures at 2 locations. They mostly talk about just measuring it in one location, which is not what I would recommend. And then they say, yeah, you can also then measure again in a second location. People have talked about measuring in multiple locations, but it says pretty clearly in the manual, if whatever you measure the second time, it just overrides the second measurement. So there's really only effectively measuring in 2 locations. And they actually are like, find the worst location just by trial and error, just with your ears, like this is the worst location, and measure there. And then they're like, yeah, it'll make the first location a bit worse, but it'll make the second location a bit better. And I'm like, okay, again, they're not like lying about that. That's kind of an interesting method that they're talking about. But yeah, exactly as Tom said, you don't need this. You already went through the process of manually finding the best way to get uniform bass using your dual subwoofers. And then this isn't doing anything that YPOW can't do. YPOW with RSC has fur filters as well. Odyssey has it. Dirac has it. This isn't doing anything that those things can't do. In fact, it's doing a little bit less, because if you have the Odyssey editor app or you have Dirac, you can manually change it. In the case of YPOW, you can't manually change their target curve, but they're just going for a flat line too. So it's not really doing anything different. So I wouldn't say in your case that you need to purchase this, but that's what this device is doing. I'm not really against it. I find I can think of instances where this would make sense. And if you don't want to do any of the manual process, it can automate some of it, but it's not magic.
No, there's nothing. And they have like bass boost modes on these things too. Yeah. It looked like I didn't see that Rob had linked up the manual here until it was too late, so I went and found it myself. But the editor app, the Odyssey editor app, allows you to just kind of create your own curve, and having some sort of preset bass boost. While convenient, it's not necessarily applicable to every situation. So you kind of want to be able to adjust it to yourself, or as you do what I do, let it do its thing, set it to flat, go on with your life. So I don't really like Rob said, there are certainly applications for this.
Yep.
I don't think yours is one.
No.
Daniel says, did Rob totally undersell Sony's X93L and X95L mini LED backlit TVs
by calling them my favorite LCD TVs available in 2023?
People hear what they want to hear, Rob, and the fact that you didn't say it it does not affect their reality.
I said
their
they were
reality
my favorite,
is
but they
that
cost
you do not like their TV enough.
Right.
You did not gush enough about their TV.
I said they were my favorite, but they cost the same as OLEDs, so I'd get an OLED. That's what I said about them. But I said they come as close to an OLED as any LCDs out there this year.
There you go. He sort of said that we recommend an OLED most highly if budget allows, and that if we're going to recommend an LCD TV, it would probably be the TCL QM8 or Q7. Mm-hmm. But Rob did say that for 2023, Sony's X95L probably comes closest to OLED-like performance, and then the X93L was really nice butter zone, as is basically a 95, but with half as many local dimming zones. Well, Daniel spent some time looking at some TVs at Best Buy, which is definitely the way that you should look at TVs to know whether or not one's better than the other. He knows it isn't the best environment to compare, but he thought the Sony X93 and the 95 looked way better than the TCL TVs. You can understand the price difference.
TCLs? Because there's a whole variety of TCLs.
You can understand the price difference being a factor, but the 95L had him thinking he was back at the backlight Master Drive X Z9D days when he actually had to choose it over the OLED models. When he actually chose it over OLED models that were available at the time. The black levels looked amazing in Best Buy.
No, but they are really good.
I'm not saying they're not good.
Very close
I'm
to
just
OLED.
saying under fluorescent lights at Best Buy, they look good. The bloomings seem to be basically a non-issue again at Best Buy. They get dazzlingly bright, and even the off-angle viewing isn't that bad. It's very impressive. So for a very well-lit room with windows to the sides and on the back wall, would we say a 95L is actually a better choice in the current OLED? If you bought it, it's great. We love it. It's the best TV ever.
It's a really nice TV.
There you go. Can we just say that?
It's a super nice TV.
And if you want a size that is less than 85 inches, would the 93 outperform an OLED? It would not. It does not objectively do that because of the whole it's not an OLED thing. And I don't mean that it's a bad TV. It's just, Okay, so we're shopping for cars right now. We're shopping for Hondas and Toyotas. You know what the difference is? I don't know. They're both very good. Okay? They're both very good. They're both very good cars. But if I buy one, does that mean I hate the other one? No. It just means the one I found was the right price and the right configuration and everything else, right? Doesn't mean I hate the other one. Somebody asked, what's the best TV for me? We gave them an answer. Doesn't mean it's not the best TV for you. It just means it wasn't the best TV for them, in our opinion, which could be wrong. Because we don't know all the factors. People come at us all the time with questions like, well, what I didn't tell you is I actually live on the sun.
So, I mean, look, the X95L, which in North America is only available in 85-inch size, it does have one clear, objective, distinct advantage over any OLED that you could buy in a really well-lit, sunlit, windows everywhere room, which is that for full screen brightness, and including just standard dynamic range, if you just want to pump the backlight up and get that standard dynamic range image as bright as you possibly can, it can make its full screen considerably brighter than any OLED. That is fact, and that is an absolutely justifiable reason to go and get that X95L over an OLED if that's the room you have. That is the choice I would make. If I've got a really sun-drenched room, I don't necessarily want to put an OLED in there. It isn't going to look its best. And that X95L, it costs the same as a G3, okay? You're not saving money over a G3, which is the brightest OLED that's out there right now. But I could see it in a sun-drenched room. I might choose that X95L, and I wouldn't have any qualms doing that. X93L gets about as bright as a G3, but costs about the same as a C3. So it's not some gigantic difference between X93L and an OLED. I would have a tough choice there doing that. I wouldn't be down on getting the X93 OLED at all if I'm in the smaller screen sizes that the X95L is not available in. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong here. Yeah, that's it. They also asked, like, do the TCLs really stack up against those Sonys? But yeah, that QM8 is pretty darn close, to especially those X93Ls. It actually gets brighter than the X93Ls. The processing, not quite as good as the Sonys. There's some advantage there, but it's the cost savings, right? It's the cost savings, really hard to ignore. So if I need a super bright TV and I need a big size and I need a lower price, then I'm going to get a TCL.
And guess what? If you got the Sony, you still got a good TV.
You got a fantastic TV.
No one cares. I mean, literally, no one cares. It's just like all the people trying to convince me that the bike they bought or the component they bought for their bike is the best. They just want me to agree with them. I'm just like, I don't like your bike. No, like I just don't like it.
If I'm not getting an OLED, I'm gonna want to get a Sony LCD this year. That's what the way it was. Some years ago, it was a Samsung LCD. Those were the closest to OLED at the time. Yeah, the last year was Sony's for sure.
So he's tried using dual displays, a 4K TV and a 4K projector. It seemed like the natural thing to do was to plug all your sources into your AV receiver. He had a flagship Marantz at the time. And then use the receiver's dual HDMI outputs to feed both displays. We know where this is going, right? Sometimes the video signal drops out, or there's an extended black screen while you can hear the audio playing, but a new HDMI handshake has to take place for some reason. He's heard the advice on how to fix these sorts of issues, and it always seems to involve spending more money on some external HDMI box like an HD Fury.
Yep.
So why don't we're going to blame the receiver manufacturers here? So why don't the receiver manufacturers just build the same capabilities into their high-end AV receivers to begin with? I mean, other than the cost and making it more expensive for things that most, if not the vast majority of people never do. Why should he have to buy some additional box just to get the stupid HDMI EDID situation functioning without glitches all the time? And we're still blaming the AV receiver for this, are we? We're blaming them?
Well, I mean, I can see the logic of this question, right? He's like, look, we're saying there's just a device that can fix it. Why not build that solution into, not necessarily the least expensive AV receivers, but the high-end ones? I can see that's a logical question. That's a perfectly reasonable line of thinking.
What it comes down to, let's keep going.
I just want to say on that there's a more of a reason than just price alone, which is that the HD Fury devices and that, they aren't certified by HDMI LLC. They're not following the rules, which is why they can fix the things that following the rules breaks. There's a
Thank you, HDMI.
This is why Emotiva and Monoprice have not been able to add HDMI 2.1 to their pre-pros, because both of those companies, they're like, we follow the rules, and when we follow the rules and we do all of our quality control testing, it breaks all the bloody time, and we can't get this thing to work because they do get it certified by HDMI LLC, and they're like, we followed all the rules and this stuff doesn't work, and they don't want to send it out to their customers without knowing that it works, and they can't get there.
That's an even better reason than my snarky response.
I mean, that's what's going on. So I mean, actually, people have mentioned how Dane and Marantz, they have workarounds in there that don't meet HDMI LLC specs, but they're a big enough company that they've kind of gotten away with it. Like, they still got it certified, and then they kind of fudge some stuff in the firmware to make it more functional. But like HD Fury, they don't have to worry about that stuff. That's not HDMI certified.
Yes, why is any of this necessary? You've got two 4K displays, a high-end AV receiver with two HDMI outputs, and all the certified HDMI cables. Why the heck doesn't it just work?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know.
We're still talking about ARC, right? I mean, yes, ARC has been around for like over a decade now, and it's still not. It's still not working. And you're asking us why this doesn't work. Honestly, you sometimes feel that you'd just rather go back to 1080p with 6.1 audio, not 6.1, 7 point. It's fine. With component video cables and no HDMI audio, just because it worked. And it never seemed to fail or glitch in the middle of things for seemingly no reason. So why does everything with fixing HDMI seem like more of a band-aid than an actual cure? Because it has never been and will never be about your convenience. HDMI is not about the consumer. It has never been about the consumer. They have marketed it so it's like, oh, we've got all these features that are going to make your life better. We got this feature that's going to make it so that Harmony can close down their remote thing because they don't need to be around anymore because we've got CEC, and it's gonna make them obsolete. So
and
they're
the manufacturers like, can we make that proprietary to just our brand? So you have to buy all our brand. Is there a way we can do that, HDMI?
So
yeah,
the reality is that it's always been about copy protection. That is the only real reason HDMI exists. It is to stop
Which is so
piracy.
Who is copying stuff in real time by recording their HDMI output?
But it doesn't matter. So back when we had component cables, which were a lot of cables, don't get me wrong, component cables and even like 6.1 or 7.1 analog cables that we would use from time, you would have this massive cables coming out the back of your AV receiver, not including the speaker wire, right? Which there's still a lot of that. But they sold it as, we are going to be able to get you down to one wire, just this HDMI cable, right? That was the selling point for you. But the real selling point was, we're going to put copy protection on it so they can't pirate your content. And that's why HDMI is the way it is. But there's also, because of that.
There's also a little bit, I'm gonna throw a little bit of, there's a touch of dishonesty coming from Daniel, just because he says, like, yeah, I'd go back to 1080p and SDR and 5.1 audio because it worked and didn't have glitches. I'm like,
would you though?
Well, because if you just set all your HDMI sources to lowest common denominator, and you're like, yeah, I got two 4K displays, but one of them's Dolby Vision and the other one isn't. But I really want that Dolby Vision logo to light up, so why can't I get that working? And why can't I get VRR working on one display but not the other? Why can't I get 120 hertz working on one? Or why can't one be playing in 24 frames and the other one's... Like, you want all those features that you spent the money for that are on the spec sheet list of your displays and on your AV receiver and all the things that it can do. And it's like, well, if you did what HDMI CEC wants to do by default, which is just set everything to the lowest common denominator, it is stable. But then you don't get any of the features that you paid for on the spec sheet. So, yeah, there's a little bit of dishonesty there, because this could actually be very stable because you could set everything to the lowest common denominator, and then it would be quite stable with HDMI.
Okay, we'll do one more. We'll be done. I know we're late, but we had a lot of questions. Eric managed to see Doom Part 2 in one of the 70mm film IMAX theaters. Only 12 IMAX theaters in the whole world had that version, so he felt lucky. It was a breathtaking movie, but he couldn't help but notice that the contrast of black levels really weren't much better at all compared to his $1,500 BenQ projector that he has at home. It was surprising to him, considering how much people praise the IMAX film experience. Let's remember, people watch on very small TVs from very far away, and they spent the least amount of money on those TVs as humanly possible. On the audio side of things, the bass was crazy, and the dynamic range in IMAX was definitely larger than what he uses at home. But since he's been using dual SVS subs for a while now, he knows what actual deep bass notes sound like. Dune Part 2 was bombastic, but the bass doesn't actually get that low in terms of frequency, does it? He asks, as if I've seen the movie, which I have not. It was all in the boomy and rumbly region, and honestly, it kind of seemed less tight and accurate than what he has at home. So what are our thoughts? He loves his home theater, but he knows he could have spent way more than he has. Is he honestly able to outperform IMAX in these aspects? That seems kind of crazy. I think the answer is yes, you can.
You can outperform an IMAX. There's no question about it. Yeah.
It's not that. First of all, it's not that hard. Second of all, you are calibrating for a seat. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Or maybe
a three-seater couch.
Many people only really calibrate for that one seat, and you sit in it, and it's the best seat in the house.
That's right.
Do you know which is the best seat in the IMAX theater? I don't. But do you? And if you do you get it every time you go there? And even then, I don't know that I trust that the theater workers always know how to change the settings from movie to movie, or set up the settings from movie to movie to get things absolutely dialed in and calibrated the exact way they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, IMAX these days is as close to consistent as you can get, because they're pretty strict on that. But yeah, even so, from showing to showing, it's not impossible.
So,
but I mean, on the contrast and black levels tip, IMAX is not HDR. It's not. Yes. It's standard dynamic range. When you go to the digital IMAX theaters, they're using DLP projectors, and it's not the 6-chip DLP projectors. It is 2, 3-chip DLP projectors. They've got, I mean, they are the cinema DLP projectors, but they've got pretty close to the same contrast and black levels as the home DLP projectors. It's not wildly different technology. And it's not a Dolby Cinema version where they went with the 6-chip, which is basically like a black and white layer before the color layer to get those black levels deeper and to get HDR capability on a projection setup. So, I mean, the film version, right? The DLP version was trying to mimic the film version. The film version, yeah. I mean, look, go see any film. Black is not inky jet black. And you're in an auditorium that has exit signs on and lights for safety on the stairs. And that light gets onto the screen and it washes out the black levels to some extent. It's unavoidable. Yeah. You can absolutely beat the experience. And in terms of, tightness and perfected bass at your particular seat in your theater, you can absolutely tune it better than the entire IMAX auditorium.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and it is. Yeah, it's like 35. It's like 32 hertz is like the lowest note in Dune 2. So,
so he wanted to comment that he used my recommendation over at AV Gadgets to buy his wife some Earfun Air Pro 3 head earphones, which I reviewed at some point, I guess. And she really loves them. She likes their features and fit a lot more than her old J-Lab earphones. So thank you for that. You're welcome.
There's the comment you wanted, Tob. I just put it in here amongst Eric's questions.
My reviews are literally, I don't pull any punches. I'm not doing anything. I just tell you what I think.
Changing lives. You're an influencer, Tom. I'm an
influencer. I'm going to do a makeup tutorial right after this. Why do some streaming-only TV shows use a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio? Notice that with Ahsoka, it's only ever going to be seen on 16 by 9 TVs for the most part. So why not fill the entire screen? It's an artistic choice.
It sure is. They want to give it a particular cinematic feel. It's in fact that's 2.39 to 1 on Ahsoka. Ooh. It's even wider than 2.35 to 1. But yeah, it's purely artistic choice. And then look, we like Thomas talked about, right? WandaVision changing aspect ratios because it made sense with the era that they were trying to mimic in the television show. So movies and directors, they choose. I mean, very often they'll make that choice at the beginning, but sometimes they change it midstream as well. And it's all an artistic endeavor. I hear the people who are like, I've got this TV. I don't particularly like having black bars on the top and bottom or on the sides. I'm like, just fill that whole screen. I mean, you could crop and zoom if you wanted to. You can do that on your end, but I wouldn't, because then you're literally missing some of the image that you were meant to see.
Yes. He used to have his pair of 2 SVS subs, a pair of PB10 ISD at the midpoints of his 2 side walls, but then he rearranged some furniture, and now the best locations are diagonally opposite corners, front, left, and rear right. His theater is a converted garage, so it's an enclosed rectangle. Does he need to do anything special in terms of setting the phase knobs or pointing the drivers in any specific direction to get the best results? You could do the Rob's 12-step thing, but as far as facing the drivers, I mean, for the phase, but as far as facing the drivers, that's not going to make any real difference. Just point them into the room and call it good.
Yeah, like with an enclosed rectangle, if it is an enclosed rectangle of a shape, then mathematically you shouldn't need to do anything at all. You leave the phase at 0 on both of the subs as far as their phase dials go, and you just set up the subwoofers exactly the way you would imagine, right? The front left corner, it's just the driver is facing forward with a front facing subwoofer, is just facing straight forward. Everything is parallel to the walls. There's no angles or tilting or anything like that. And the one in the rear right corner is just facing straight forward in that corner. And mathematically, that's all you should need to do. If you are then, playing a bass sweep on repeat and going to each of your 3 seats and finding some non-uniformity when you do that, then that's my 12-step guide, just the first couple of steps of it. You don't have to go through all 12, where you make some slight adjustments to the phase knob of whatever subwoofer is physically closest to you, but it shouldn't require anything more than that.
So lastly, he asked, should he be putting his BenQ projector into high lamp mode whenever he watches HDR? Did he say how far away from his screen he is?
I mean, it's been in the past, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. He's noticed that, yes, it gets brighter, but the black levels also get lighter. So should he be going for maximum brightness when it's HDR, or should he be more concerned about the suffering black levels and just leave the lamp mode alone? Well, it kind of depends on your seating distance and how far from the screen your projector is as well. But generally speaking, if you're changing the lamp mode, you're changing the calibration. I mean, you're changing how the projector itself looks. So I would not change it personally, but maybe Rob's going to say something different.
I mean, there's not a strict right or wrong here, because the thing is, you've got with the BenQ projector that he has, it's like it's HDR compatible. It's not really HDR capable. Yeah. When you make it output more light by changing the lamp mode to high, the actual contrast doesn't change at all. So that means that, if you're dividing the most amount of light by the least amount of light, but that ratio stays the same, then if you raise the high end, you've also raised the low end, and that's exactly what you've seen. The contrast, it doesn't actually get high dynamic range. It just gets everything is a bit brighter. That's all that happened there. So there's no right or wrong, right? Because you're like, well, what I care most about when I switch from SDR to HDR is that highlights look brighter. Well, then you're going to want to go into high lamp mode, but you're going to have to go along with, well, the whole contrast ratio stayed the same due to the limits of the DLP technology in that particular projector. And so the black levels get brighter too. Or you're going to be like, no, I care most about black levels. I'm just going to have to sacrifice that the highlights don't look any brighter than they did in SDR. I'm seeing an HDR signal, but I'm not really seeing a higher dynamic range than I used to see in standard dynamic range. So yeah, you're not really moving it either way. And it's purely, I mean, you can do that with SDR too, right? If you're just like, I want all my SDR content to look brighter, you put it in high lamp mode and it all looks brighter, but the black levels got lighter too. So there isn't really a way to fix this.
All right, who do we have left?
We have on our list Dan. Let me see. I'm scrolling down a ways here. James, Patrick, and Dazz. I think that's it. Yeah, I just wanted to let Adriano and Joe know that I did receive their emails. They came in on Monday. I knew we wouldn't get to them, so I didn't write them up on this week's topic list, but we definitely didn't reach them.
I'm going to be done in a second. Stop.
We sure are.
She's like being weird. All right. If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to, what else?
I mean, that's usually all you say at the end of the podcast.
Oh, good.
We're very sleepy.
I'm very tired.
You usually wait for me to mention that, we thank everybody for continuing to send in their questions. But question@avrant.com is the place to send those. Our email. Thank you.
Yes, question@avrant.com. All right. Until next week, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
We're not going to thank our listeners of the week.
Nope.
That's what we forgot to do.
Oh, listeners of the week. I even scrolled up to it. We're going to thank our listeners of the week. We're going to thank Adriano for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, as well as our 130 patrons over at patreon.com, including James.
Thank you, Adriano, for PayPal and patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. The big thanks to our 130 patrons over there. James, thank you for being one of them.
Let's thank Justin and Aaron for sending Rob movie codes to check out for them.
I swooped in there early, Justin, so I got it ahead of Tom and Aaron. Thank you very much for continuing to do that. It's very nice of it.
We want to thank those who sent us notes of gratitude, including Jay, Karl, Eric, Aaron, Dan, James, and Dazz. Thank you for thanking us.
Indeed. I'll say those names one more time. Jay, Karl, Eric, Aaron, Dan, James, and Dazz. Thank you very much for your notes of encouragement and gratitude. We super duper appreciate it. And I will say big thanks to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. You know where to send those questions. We said it a moment ago.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.